On the day when Layla celebrates his 15th birthday, he is congratulated for his skill and even given a high rating, and he, walking down the street, looks around tiredly and mutters that it is already quite late and he would like to finish work earlier. Suddenly Layla flinches. Something hits him right in the back. It doesn't slap, but plops so hard that he almost loses his balance. It turns out that a girl has pressed herself against him from behind and is firmly stuck to his back. Layla calls her Sylphie, and she has a gentle, sweet face and long, smooth hair that falls in even strands. Layla makes a funny grimace, and Sylphie looks at his sudden reaction in confusion, then begins to tremble and hides her face as if she does not want him to see her, but at the same time she moves lower while he tries to look her straight in the eyes. Eventually Sylphie cannot hold back. She laughs loudly and says that she always laughs right in his face, calling him Mel, and the laughter is so strong that tears appear, and she, bursting with laughter, grabs her stomach with her hands. Layla smiles and quietly listens to the girl laughing nearby, gently noting that today she is especially lively. The girl suddenly falls silent, blushes, and emotionally explains that it is all because the boy always asked her to be happy, after which she smiles calmly and gently. The young man reaches out his hand and gently strokes her head with his palm, saying that he sees she is obedient, and the girl smiles sweetly and presses even closer to him. He admits that despite all his quirky traits, the girl has become very attached to him, and in their closeness there is a warm, almost homely trust. The little girl is named Sylphina, and she is an orphan. She has neither parents nor any relatives at all, and a year ago her father brought her here. Now she lives in the church, and the father takes care of her because she has lost all memories and remembers only her name, and she asks him if he has finished work for today and what they will do when they play. He laughs, then smiles gently, and says that in fact today he turned 15 years old. Sylphie shockingly opens her mouth, about to say something, but the boy beats her to it and solemnly announces that he can finally receive the blessing, continuing to smile indulgently and be proud of himself. She asks if it is true that now he can get a skill from the Earth Goddess Mother, and honestly admits that she thinks it is very cool. She adds that he will become an adult, and the boy thinks and replies, "Adulthood has as many definitions as there are people," but still agrees with this way of thinking and continues to ponder. She does not understand and asks what else he has to do to become an adult, and the young man smiles crookedly and seems to fall into nirvana. Then something indecent and humiliating occurs to him, and his cheeks flush with shame. Sylphina asks again what it is, and the young man begins to get even more embarrassed, so much that his whole face literally burns from discomfort, and she still cannot understand what is happening to him, while he awkwardly mumbles that he has to do a bunch of things. The man shouted to Mel Layla and asked if it was true, and it turned out that he was Ro, after which Ro asked if Mel was still there, while the man carried a whole stack of firewood as if hurrying to complete his task. Ro tells him that his father is already waiting, and the man touches his back himself. It is stiff from exhausting wood chopping, and Mel Lilith apologizes. Meanwhile, he hurries to inform Sylphie that he will leave right now, and she wishes him good luck. Mal Lilith will wonder what special skill he will get, and as soon as he thinks about it, he is overwhelmed by a memory of a hard life. His mother died of illness, and his father from alcoholism, and he remained lonely for years. When he gets his skills, finds a job, and becomes rich, he will say goodbye to this small town, comforting himself with modest dreams without unnecessary claims about millions. So, lost in fantasies, he rushes straight through the church corridors. He needs a special skill so that he can confidently live away from this cursed place, and it seems that by cursed place, he means the village and the church, where they explain to him. His ability is called appraisal. The father cautiously asks if he is okay, and he cannot hide his surprise, as if something in the answer or the result does not fit his expectations at all. He awkwardly asks again if it is true that he was given exactly that appraisal, and the man answers firmly, yes. Moreover, skills are ranked from S to E, and among all, his main skill, which the protagonist received, turns out to be the worst. Malala thinks that he received an E, just an E, and this thought tightens his heart. He is very sad, ashamed of his awkward failure, and lowers his gaze. His father tries to cheer him up and says that he also supposedly acquired the skill of evaluation, so, allegedly, it's not that bad, and Mel Lilith nods and replies that it's true. Evaluating is a rare and incredibly useful skill, and if it is truly valuable, he sees it. He can recognize people, both those who are suitable and those who have no place. He admits that he cannot yet make a perfect evaluation because he is currently at rank E, but if he raises his rank, he will be able to work in the royal palace. The young man thanks his father, who pats him on the shoulder and assures him that he did nothing, because that power was given to him by the goddess Mother Earth, and the talent is already innate. Uncertainly and awkwardly, the boy says that he is not yet fully convinced of this, but at the same time, having such a talent, he will do everything in his power to rise in rank and achieve success. The father says briefly and confidently, "It will be so. Let him try," and adds that when he raises his rank, he will have serious trouble, the knife in his hand, which he stabbed into Mel's chest. In the next moment, everything in the young man's life turns upside down. Mal panics terribly along with Lilat. He does not understand why he did it at all, and from fear rises to his feet on his knees, trembling all over. The father calmly explains, if he is now E rank, then during the transition to B rank, he will be able to evaluate people, their essence, intentions, danger. Malef tries to grab the sword, but his body immediately cramps. He starts coughing, suffocating, as if his lungs protest every movement. The father only laughs and says that this is just a precaution, but the boy is instantly twisted by twice as strong pains. Mal Lilat falls to the floor, coughing up blood hoarsely, and every breath sounds like the end. The father coldly suppresses his gaze. He pretends to be a father to find others like him, with the skill to evaluate and mercilessly reprimand people. The boy barely breathes, raises his gaze through the haze of pain and sees features he recognizes from within. Before him is the real father. His name is Hejel Ois. He is a great thief and swindler, and his skill is deception hidden behind every word and smile. Maulaila guesses that this is his father's status, and reads with amazement, "Great thief and swindler," immediately understanding that the father did not want him to see this. Hegel tells him that despite everything, he is amazingly lucky. Even with an E rank, his ability to evaluate is extremely rare, and that is why, if it weren't for him in his class, the young man would never have become an appraiser and would not have lived such a wonderful life until he was already on the brink of death. The father looks at the young man clutching his chest wound and orders to get rid of the body, bitterly muttering, "What a pity," then turns away and places his hand on his thigh. Mal Lalith pulls a dagger from himself, catches his gaze, and thinks the time has come, but does not know exactly how to act yet still hopes he will manage. Then he notices the back of the man's head and calls him a thief named Hegelois. In response, the man declares that he will pass all the dirty work onto someone else, and Hegel forces the boy to widen his eyes sharply. He almost begins to read everything about him, while he was just calling Ro. The man was still choking on a scream and continued calling Ro, but suddenly the young man snatched the dagger and rushed at him lightning fast, stabbing the blade right into his back. Due to the surprise, the man immediately began coughing, fell to the ground, and trying to break free, swung his hand to hit the boy, but Mal Lalith stepped back and attacked first with a strike from the right side. Meanwhile, the father managed to fully heal all wounds thanks to the goddess's embrace, and in frantic haste and panic, he flailed about, trying to catch the slipping moment. Maulaila realized that everything was exactly repeating as in the status. The temporary ability of the goddess, embrace, can only be used once, so he is no longer able to heal himself, and again rushes into attack with the dagger. He dies, coughs hoarsely one last time, and Mal Lilit trembles, and focusing his gaze on his deep wound, tries to comprehend at least something, but still does not understand why he is still alive. He sharply changes his decision, because he finally understands the reason for what happened. He looks at the blood on his own hands, then at the body before him, and concludes that it is still his own fault. He accepts the blame and realizes the possibilities of his unique ability. He can read information about targets, and the X-rank level allows him to see anyone's statistics and improve his own knowledge and skills depending on what exactly is read. Despite an unstable mental state, the body has already fully recovered thanks to the goddess's embrace ability. When he first hears about the X evaluation level, he is filled with surprise. Isn't that the highest level? That is exactly how he formulates his thought about the X rank. He is suddenly illuminated by the connection between what he has already managed to gather, knowledge, experience, and skills. When he read his father's status, he absorbed from him the mastery with which he was healed. Embrace of the goddess healed the wound, so he could move quickly thanks to even a slight skill in agility and use his dagger. Because it has its own unique ability, all these possibilities belong to the man who attacked him. Suddenly Sylphie bursts into the room, announces that she has summoned Ryu, and addresses the father, but sees before her his bloody dead father and Mal Laylit with a dagger, who is sitting very close. Sylphie begins to tremble and cannot comprehend how everything happened. The father is dead, and Mal is next to the dagger, and suddenly Mal Laylit himself lunges at her. Mal Laylit goes out into the corridor with the dagger extended, and Ro says in a trembling voice that he is scared. Then Mal replies, "The guy killed his father, so now he will kill him too," and Ro raises his hands. Mal Laylit goes out into the corridor with the dagger extended, and Ro says in a trembling voice that he is scared. Then Mal replies, The guy killed his father, so now he will kill him too, and Ro raises his hands. Mal Laylat tells Mel Laylat that he is terrible because he holds Sylphie as a hostage, and Mel Laylat looks at the girl and begins to invent excuses, insisting that there is a reason for all this. Ryo declares that he can kill anyone if he has a reason for it, and growls at the guy to be quiet, while Ryo himself smiles suspiciously. Mal Laylat notices in Ro's features a great thief and his subordinate, and realizes that he already knows about Mao's unique talent. He is able to block moves, keep Sylphie captive, but cannot apply too much force due to back pain. Malila goes mad and shouts that everything is the opposite. He holds Sylphie captive, and she obeys him, and in a frenzy exclaims where Ro knows about Sir Hegel and who told him, then fiercely demands to explain everything with a lesson. Malailat believes that his true unique abilities are taijutsu and strength, so he decides to absorb them while reading and completely freezes, fixing his gaze directly on the enemy. Ro attacks with a fist, but Malailat dodges and strikes from below, after which Ro falls to his knees and shudders in pain, and Mel Laylat immediately kicks him in the stomach, and Ro writhes from the blow. He is wildly outraged that he keeps getting stabbed in the back, so in the end, Mel Laylat understands the intention and finishes him off, while Sylphie helplessly watches everything in fear until Mel Laylat turns to her. She grabs him by the sleeves and shakes her head, silently begging. The young man can just stay silent, after which Mal Layloth, reading her thoughts, asks him to take her with him and not leave her, and her gaze mixes sadness and hope. He smiles, blushes, and reaches out his dirty hand to the girl, inviting her to go with him, but from her shock it becomes clear. She never imagined he could read minds, so, trembling, she takes his hand and agrees. After some time, the boy and the girl loaded the cart with all their belongings things, boxes and bags, with the boy taking the heaviest load and the girl carrying the lighter one, and after that they set off and left the village. While they were traveling, the boy tells Sylphie that the horse seems unable to go any further, so he suggests resting a bit right here, and she agrees, while Mal Laylat reproaches himself in his thoughts. He stole this carriage from the church, so from now on he calls himself a murderer and a thief. He suddenly jumps out of the carriage for a moment, then calmly offers his hand, helping Sylphie to get down, while he himself feverishly counts how many years in prison he will be sentenced to if they get caught. While the carriage rolled on, the boy told Sylphie the whole truth about his father, and about Ro, and spoke without interruptions, and she listened with such concentration, as if holding every word in her hands, until they continued their journey further. They stopped by the campfire, and trembling from warmth and fatigue, ate dried meat, quickly dividing it between themselves. He killed a man, although that man was a criminal and tried to attack him. No, rather, he almost brought everything to the end, and if he said he acted in self-defense, it would all sound like self-protection. But did he do the right thing, and was there really another way out? There was no time to think, so the young man, all tense, repeatedly replays those seconds and consequences in his head. He cannot get rid of the thought of how everything could have ended if he had not acquired this unique evaluative skill, if Hegel had not been a criminal, and if he had not been hiding in the city then. He clenches the food in his fist, feeling guilty, and tries to shift the responsibility onto someone else. Although he chose to live only for himself, did he not know he had to answer for his actions? Sylphie puts a sylphic bracelet on his hand and confidently tells him to calm down. It is not his fault, and a firmness flashes in her gaze, which first surprises Mel Laylat, and then he blooms with a smile. After a short silence, she asks what he will do next, and he turns away from painful thoughts and answers with a question. Doesn't she want to somehow return to her homeland? And she thinks and says that she remembers nothing. Then Sylphie adds that if it were possible, she would want to return home, and Mel smiles in response and suggests setting off right now. The girl sighs and admits that she does not know where her homeland is, and Mal Laylat replies that he also knows almost nothing about it, so Sulfina Estfalania looks at him awkwardly. Then Mal Laylat uses his evaluation ability and sees in her the traits of Sylphia and says that she resembles a princess of the Elven Kingdom. This little elf named Sulfina Estfalania lost her memories because of one artifact, and also she was kidnapped by thieves who wanted to sell her for a high price, so in surprise she asks who this princess is. Mayo Laylat says that he himself does not know all the details, but if memory serves, the Elven Kingdom in the East has the same surname as hers, and adds that it very much looks like she is the first princess. Sylphie, recalling Mel's words, thinks, if he says so I will believe, nods and replies that she understands, while her face is very serious, as if the decision was not easy for her. Mal Laylat asks why she believes him so unconditionally, since it is really strange that he himself asserts such things, and Sulfina looks at him awkwardly, and he smiles back at her. He fell silent for a moment, smiled gently at the girl, and said that during the transition he received the blessing skill of evaluation, because of which she greeted him with surprise and her face was glowing with happiness. Mal Laylat awkwardly nodded to her in thanks, asked her to wait, and asked if she should react differently, because she is the first princess. Isn't that so? He sighed and explained that at his skill level E3 he can evaluate people, so it was thanks to this that he learned what was needed. Mal Leela quietly noted that the first princess would probably just say that she understood everything, and the girl thought long and hard, touching her chin with her finger. Eventually she smiled and asked if they were asking or demanding too much. The young man sharply turns his head to the girl. He is clearly surprised and embarrassed, and the girl closes her eyes and says that it doesn't matter to her who she is, because the most important thing for her is Mel. She smiles gently, lays her head on his knees and tightly squeezes his hands, after which she quietly confesses that she cherishes him. He looks at her with surprise, blushes, and starts making a funny grimace again. The boy freezes in shock and fixes his gaze on the girl, while Sylphie softly and sweetly, embarrassedly closes her eyes and begins to quietly giggle. The boy becomes shy, tries to smile, but grimaces again. This makes Sylphie incredibly amused, and he distorts his face more and more, so the girl laughs sincerely at his funny grimaces. The girl admits that her stomach hurts from laughing so hard, and then Mel Laylat gently smiles and calmly looks at her, after which he carefully asks if she is okay and tenderly tries to soothe her. He rises to his feet, extends his hand to Sylphie and pulls her closer, as if inviting her to share his determination, and she raises her eyes, still not fully understanding what exactly he wants to tell her. Mel Lillet announces that this will be their new task, and his voice sounds composed and uncompromising. He explains, since they already know who this girl is, they will head to the Elven Kingdom in the east, and asks Sylphie how she feels about this proposal, while the young man has already firmly decided to fulfill his new goal, nudging her towards agreement with his gaze. Sylphie smiles and nods, and Mel Lillet suddenly admits that he did something bad, and that their search will inevitably lead them to him, so maybe he will cause her trouble. She responds calmly and confidently that there will be no problems as long as she is with him, and at that moment in the background, the cart shakes from a clear, almost cheeky crunch. Someone is actively chewing. Mel Lillet says he will fall asleep now, and as soon as dawn comes he will go east, but his sleep does not catch his thoughts. He notices that the chewing does not stop, and then someone is heard swallowing food in short bursts, and his eyes sharply darken with suspicion. They both turn to the carriage and immediately realize someone is inside because a crunchy sound comes from within, as if someone is chewing right behind the door. Mal Lillet orders Sylphie to wait, and he himself moves toward the noise, sneaking up to the carriage like a shadow. In the cart, someone noticed the meat, grabbed the basket, solemnly declared that they adore it, and that they will take this meat for everyone. The stranger saw Mel and was sharply frightened. As soon as the young man looked inside the carriage, she jumped out of it like a cat with cat ears and a tail. From the clothing and slender silhouette, it was clear that it was a girl. Mel froze from surprise. Mel Leela understood that the alien was incredibly fast, but still managed to be quicker. She grabbed his leg, and with all her might knocked him to the ground, and at that very moment Sylphie thought that this move looked painful. Mel Laylat at that moment firmly decided, if he reads the status, he will be able to predict any moves of the thief, so he looked ahead and ordered the stranger to surrender, not believing that he could escape. The young man was extremely serious. Then the young man felt something soft and tried to understand what exactly it was, and the stranger immediately began to moan in pain, lying next to the box of meat, and quietly asked what the problem was. The girl says if the boy wants to eat her, let him know she is not very tasty, and asks to be released because before him is Clara Ku, an orphan and a half-tiger who is only 13 years old. Bad Leela immediately pulls away from the girl and apologizes for grabbing her, then raises his voice to a shout. The meat she found supposedly belongs to him. Could it be that she stole it? The boy shouts that this is not true. The meat belongs to them, and the girl is a thief. And at that moment, Clara Ku hisses and exclaims that the law of nature commands to take everything that lies unevenly, so the quarrel flares up into full growling and snarling. He pulls the box of meat and declares that she will return it anyway, but suddenly the wolf begins to howl. This means an order in the pack, and it becomes clear they also came for the meat. Clara Ku claws into the box, and the attackers rush forward. Everyone growls, and Mal Lilat for a moment wonders if this is really a pack of wolves, but from some moment he boldly asks himself since when they have been here, after which he immediately calls Sylphie. The girl instantly runs to the boy, and he sharply gives the order to act together. He orders her to hide inside the carriage and not to worry because he will deal with the danger that is approaching, and she obeys, asking him to take care of himself, and without hesitation runs to the carriage. Mal Laylat realizes that everything is going wrong. There are only 11 of them, and although he is capable of judging and observing simultaneously, in reality he can read only one separately, so he clearly sees the motives they all want to kill him. He thinks even if he calculates each one separately, they will still catch him, as soon as they attack synchronously, and at that moment his eyes sharply widen. He notices a somewhat proud special wolf sitting on the edge of a small cliff, and decides that this is the leader. Mal Laylat is completely convinced. This is undoubtedly their leader, so he begins to evaluate him, staring intently at the wolf, completely ignoring everyone else. Then the young man begins to howl like a real wolf, and the pack leader first freezes in surprise. Then Clara quietly murmurs to herself, blushes, and also seems not to believe her own reactions, while the other wolves confusedly do not understand what is happening, and for a moment the whole pack freezes in astonishment. At this time, the young man jumps from place to place among the wolves, trying to reach the leader, and finally rushes to him and grabs the wolf by the neck, saying quite seriously, "Now the wolf will obey him." While the young man examines what abilities this wolf has, the leader speaks to him in his language and confirms that he understands and listens to him, because the special ability of this wolf is to understand human speech. Mal was about to respond and start a conversation, but just then the boy snaps out of his thoughts. The wolf raises his head, looks intently at the man, and declares that they are not hostile. The wolf asks why the young man threw Clara to the floor and scolded her, and at that moment it becomes visible how the girl firmly holds a basket of meat in her hands and carefully watches every word and movement. At that moment, Sylphie peeked outside, and the boy embarrassedly explained that because of his offense, he essentially only wanted to take their food, the one the girl was going to steal, and from shock the wolf freezes and looks away. The wolf tells Mel that he understands the forest rule. If he was stolen from, he steals back, and at that moment Mal Laylat senses the hostile hissing disappeared. The leader behaved amazingly obediently, and the young man still held him a moment before the conflict could flare up again. The wolf asks Mel to forgive the girl because she is like a daughter to him. He taught her to trust animal instincts, and he himself looks stunned. Meanwhile, the girl has already opened the basket, and squinting from hunger and pleasure, decided to take another piece of meat. The wolf adds that there is no blood relation between them, and that they were the ones who attacked the carriage, where there were people kidnapped by traders of forbidden goods, those who were to be sold. The girl clung to the wolves, and they saved her from under the wheels and the shadow of foreign intentions. The wolf explains that pack members are his family, so she became his daughter, and Mel freezes in surprise. Mal Laylat says he said she is his daughter, but the caption states that she is an orphan, and the young man involuntarily wonders why it turns out that way, while the wolf calls Clara to him. Her father, holding meat in his mouth, asks what is going on here, and Mal Laylat orders the girl to stop eating. But her rosy face and hungry eyes do not give up. She still continues to chew the tasty meat, as if the order does not apply to her. The she-wolf sits on a stone and says that 6 months have passed since she became his daughter. The girl stops chewing meat and sharply raises her tail, and he silently gazes at her. He explains she is half human, half beast, and if it were necessary to decide whose side she should be on, he would say let her follow her human nature, because that is what he decided after observing her for half a year, but Mal Laylat does not understand this. The she-wolf insists that it is time for her to leave, to stop obeying animal instincts, and to learn the nature of humans together with the young man, but Mal Laylat is confused and cannot understand why it must be done this way. He apologizes for his persistence, and finally admits that he himself already sees the she-wolf's thoughts. If he had not called her his daughter, the pack would not have understood, and she, chewing his nerves, was only selfish. He is about to convey these words to the young man, and Clara smiles and says she understands her father, while Mal Laylat tries to intervene and whispers that she should think about it, but the girl is already full of determination. Clara hugs the wolf leader tightly and gently asks to show her father how much she has grown, and Mal Laylat stands nearby in shock, as if understanding. He no longer has any way to act. Mal Laylat approaches the carriage and orders Sylphia to move faster, because although he wants to give the horse a rest, there is no choice, and suddenly Clara appears nearby and joyfully shouts that they are already leaving, and the girl happily starts wagging her tail. Mal Laylat wonders why she ended up here at all, tries to smile, but sweat streams down his forehead, so the smile comes out strained. He lets her out and solemnly promises that now he will explain everything, saying that they are being pursued only because they are considered criminals, and Sylphia responds in surprise. Sylphie and Mal are bad people. The young man denies this and insists that there is a big misunderstanding here, and then calmly, step by step, reveals to the girl all the details of his current situation, and this night stretches so long as if it has no end. The next day the sun shone very brightly over the yard, and the horse that had pulled the cart all night finally dozed peacefully, as if someone had finally released its anxiety for this silence. Clara joyfully greeted everyone in the morning, but Mel, Lilat, and Sylphi had not yet woken up when they were suddenly awakened sharply, and they, stunned, did not understand what had happened. It turned out that Clara's explanation from yesterday did not work. Even the wolves helped him with money. The leader of the wolves said there was no need to worry because they take food as soon as someone throws it away, and this money was just set aside for such cases since they don't need it themselves. Sylphie smiled and already began making the bed, then promised to prepare breakfast, so Clara thanked him warmly. But as soon as Sylphie realized that the wolf father would not return, his question hung in the air: what to do next? Clara asked what they eat for breakfast and surprised him with her answer. In the evening they were given very little bread, and she would cook a meat-vegetable soup, so Sylphie blinked in surprise, and his heart calmed from Clara's confidence. Clara rejoices, holding fragrant bread and a warm bowl of soup in her hands, while Mal Laylat, looking at the girls, quietly thinks about something important. Soon the food was finally ready. Clara was served a bowl of delicious soup, and her eyes lit up with happiness, saliva already flowing from her mouth before the first sip. She greedily grabbed the spoon and eagerly awaited the moment to taste it. Barely tasting the soup, the girl exclaims that it is incredibly tasty, and this is the first time she has been treated like this. She literally shines with joy and says that the boy and girl are very kind. Mal Laylat solemnly announces that they plan to head east, then asks if the girl objects to going with them. Clara salutes and agrees, calling him Lord, and Mal Laylat barely surprisedly shifts his gaze to the others. Mal Laylat awkwardly falls silent because he hears Clara addressing him. She states that the boy is her master because he takes care of her, so it turns out he is her master. The boy immediately denies this. Like Laylat with a satisfied face, asks her to call him that for a long time until he becomes rich, and even until the day he finally hires a maid, and the young man nods with feigned joy. Sylphie asks in surprise if he really wants to hire a maid, and Laylat replies that he means something completely different and changes the subject without explaining fully right away. He awkwardly smiles and says that once every man dreamed of this, but admits he finds the idea banal, and Sylphie confidently replies, then she will become one, clenching her fists and focusing a determined look. Mel Lillet stops, pondering the girl's words, and later sees Maginese Sylphie, in her own likeness, greets at the door and gently calls him master, and from this Mel involuntarily finds the scene very cute. Mel Lilat says it aloud no, because she is like family to him, and he does not think this image would suit the girl, looking at her with warmth and hesitation. Mel Laylat thinks that he also has no family. Sylphie has lost her memories and has long lived far from her family, so they will travel and live together, and Clara is also an orphan. He tells Clara that she is also part of their family, and the girl, embarrassed, widens her eyes and quickly blushes. Sylphie and Mal Laylat look at her gently and smile. Clara joyfully blossoms and asks if she can call the young man brother. Mel Laylat allows it, although he finds it a bit shy, but still better than the title Meister, and the girl shines even more with happiness. She softly clarifies how then to address Sylphie's sister. Sylphie shyly replies that actually she is much younger than Clara. Clara takes the girl by the hands and says, "Let it be so, just Sylphie," and she relies on her. Clara smiles warmly and sincerely agrees with the proposal. Mel Leela watches the girls and smiles. She thinks it is extremely cute, and Sylphie looks incredibly happy. Suddenly Clara loudly meows with joy, then carefully licks the boy's cheek, after which she tells Mal that he still has some soup on his cheek. He freezes, impressed by such a prank. Silence thickly falls on the room. Sylphie looks bored, and Mel Leela immediately blushes, but Sylphie sharply gets angry. She switches to evaluation mode and sees the girl's thoughts, where only one bad one remains, so she pouts and blushes with powerless indignation. Clara decides not to stop and licks Sylphie's cheek again, then with childlike naivety declares that she also has some soup on her cheek. Sylphie begins to blush and becomes incredibly ticklish, stretches out her hands as if retreating, and asks Clara to let her go with a hug. Clara just smiles and says the girl is simply adorable. Angry Leela laughs at her cute friends, and Sylphie hopefully asks him for help, but the boy stubbornly continues to mock, while Clara whispers that Sylphie has such soft skin, and Clara's tongue is surprisingly pleasant to the touch. Sylphie says she will give Clary her bread, but the girl objects. This is her bread, and she cannot take it, while Mel Lillet, smiling, looks attentively at the girls as if he has already decided everything in advance. He sees the girls lying on the ground together and perceives it as his family, but suddenly a moment from childhood flashes in his memory. He was running to his mother, and the father was watching from afar, and at that very second anxiety overwhelms him. At this time, soldiers and knights arrive at the church, and the man impatiently rubs his hands and mutters that now he is here and starts working. His presence is felt even before he takes a step. He turns to the knight girl who is dismounting from the horse, and danger and mystery immediately appear in her figure, as if she herself controls the silence around. He extends his hand to the girl to help her mount the horse, but she sharply rejects the help and declares that the priest's killer is a first-class criminal, so the investigation will begin immediately, otherwise problems will await someone right now. Next to the squad, a live male deer addresses Marion and the soldiers and reports that Mal Leela, having received his skill, could have remained dissatisfied with it and decided to kill his father. Marion looks at him suspiciously, and the old man whispers something to him, after which she announces that she will ask him the last question. Did the murdered father use the hideout to sell participants? Ro begins to twitch and stammer, and the question throws him off track. He says no in a trembling voice, assuring that it is impossible, and then the soldier grabs Ro by the head and presses his face to the table, forcing him to only hoarsely remain silent. Marion calls this soldier Gazef, and without averting her gaze, says she will give Ro to him. Gazef obeys, and the girl immediately turns and leaves, leaving Ro in fear and helplessness. He cannot even get up. She goes away with another old man, raises her gaze to the corpse of the father, and together with him examines the body until the old man says he has just finished the assessment, so he really is a thief, Hegelois. Marion raises her hand to her chin and replies that Hegel was a big fish, so it is impossible to think that this thief was hiding here, in the church. She hesitates, but the man declares, if this guy really killed him, then he is very strong, and the newly appointed mayor objects it is impossible. He is not the kind capable of that. Marion asks what kind of person he is, and he says his name is Mel. He is an orphan, lives outside the city, worked on neighboring farms, was very kind and would not touch a thief without reason. Marion says she understands everything, but at that moment Gaze appears and apologizes, to which she asks if he found out anything, and he replies, as they thought, this man helped the priest sell people. Marion says that means he dealt with him, and Gaze replies that they do not know the details, but it seems this guy actually exposed him, and Marion immediately agrees, not averting her gaze. She admits that she does not consider him a simple guy. If he handled such a formidable opponent so easily, it means he has something more than luck. Gaze just shrugs and says that this is only his assumption for now, but in his thoughts he focuses on something else. Yesterday, he acquired an incredible skill. Mariana, after thinking a little, agrees that it is quite possible, smiles and adds, that's interesting, and the young man immediately becomes a real intrigue for her, and her eyes blaze with complete confidence. Asif sharply stops her tone, asks her not to be so frivolous, and reminds that they first of all need to focus on the issue of forbidden trade. Marion awkwardly smiles and asks him not to look at her as if she is to blame for everything. If the elf woman is nearby, they will conduct the rescue and investigation together. She turns to the leader, a good-natured man, and asks if he has any clue where exactly she might be lucky to find a lead. He replies that he is not sure, but he was informed. The wagon was moving east, quite fast. Gaze, with a serious face, says that on the eastern border there is the city of fallen heroes, where half a year ago they caught one of the traders of forbidden goods. Marion nods. The group attacked by wolves is a perfect lead, because if they interrogate the illegal goods traders, they can extract at least a crumb of information. Gaze grimly notes that if that guy is really heading to that city, it does not inspire hope at all, and Marion immediately asks him not to worry and not to lose faith. She turns to the statue of Mother Earth, clasps her hands and begins to pray, saying, let her guide them, while the leader freezes in surprise, as her companions look as if they have long been accustomed to this ritual. Suddenly, Gazeva notices that a cat has unexpectedly crept up to Marion's foot, followed by Mia, and both rub against their legs, while the men awkwardly ask where the animal came from, then try to chase it away. Asif throws a piece of meat to the cat to make it follow him, and the animal happily rushes to the treat, while Marion's eyes suddenly widen in surprise. Marion runs away, repeating that they will start an investigation, her hands trembling. Sweat streams down her face as the others rush after her, begging her to wait. Clara continues eating with full satisfaction, swallowing one dish after another, savoring every bite and beaming with happiness at each new dish. Sylphie looks into the supply bag and anxiously tells Mal that they have no more food, and Mal Lilith turns and yells at Clara, causing the girl to flinch sharply and receive another painful reprimand. Sylphie looks into the supply bag and anxiously tells Mal that they have no more food, and Mal Lilith turns and yells at Clara, causing the girl to flinch sharply and receive another painful reprimand. They ride in a wagon and Mal Laylat warns, "The next town is far, the road will take time, so returning will no longer be possible," which means they need to get food as soon as possible. Clara listens tensely, clutching her sleeves. Clara smiles and says she will get as much food as she has eaten, and Mal Laylat replies that this is wonderful, suggesting they look for food right here, and the girl laughs brightly, as if she is up to the task. After some time, Sylphie wonders what Clara will do, and Clara suddenly jumps out of the water, throwing a whole pile of fish. While the young man asks where the girl put her clothes, Clara only mysteriously remains silent and looks away, as if the secret is already working against his guesses. Clara jumped out of the water like a frog and threw the caught fish right at Mel's feet, then answered his question, explaining that it is incredibly difficult for her to swim in such clothes. Mal Layla brings her closer to the shore and says that a man standing nearby thinks she shouldn't expose herself like that, at least considering her age, and that he is so embarrassed he closes his eyes. She does not understand what the young man is hinting at and confidently states that they are a family, but he shouts in response that she must not do this even when they really are a family. The girl immediately pulls on her clothes and instantly changes. Her gaze flashes with stars, and her claws stick out as if she has just decided to defend herself. The girl jumps into the bushes, runs in nimbly, and shouts sharply, while Sylphie and Mal calmly watch as she disappears into the greenery, not understanding what happened next, until Mal impatiently tries to say something and breaks into embarrassed cries. Mal disappears into the bushes, and immediately reappears. A rabbit she just caught is clenched in her mouth, and she throws the prey right at Mal and Sylphie's feet, causing Sylphie to freeze in fear upon seeing the animal. Mel Lillet recalls that the girl used a hunting skill she already has at rank A, and still cannot believe that she is only 13 years old and already such a skilled hunter. But the next moment the girl smiles and says that this rabbit really has a lot of meat. Mel Lillet has heard more than once that people are sometimes born with unique abilities, but never thought Clara could win. Meanwhile, Sylphie trembled with fear and squeezed the boy's hands, not taking her eyes off him. The girl does not understand why the boy looks at her that way, so Clara asks if it is true that she has some unique skill, and he answers yes, it seems so. Clara finds out where the boy got these skills, since she herself does not know. Sylphie is still trembling and the boy tries to say something, but Mel Lillet finally admits that he just guessed, and asks if he can still entrust her with the hunting, to which Clara confidently replies of course he can. So that's all for this video. I hope you liked it, and see you next time. Lillet calls Sylphie. The girl involuntarily shudders, and then sincerely wonders that it is Mal who is calling her. Mel Lillet, looking at the rabbit, suggests Sylphie go and find plants, and after some time they enter the forest and start looking for food. Sylphie finds a mushroom and asks if it is edible, and Mel Lillet replies that it is a wonderful mushroom. Mel Lillet notices a strange trait of these mushrooms. Under any conditions they will laugh, and he warns Sylphie that if she eats it, the laughter will not stop and she will laugh endlessly. Sylphie says she understands, but the mushroom still looks too tasty, and Mel Lillet convinces her. Probably it will become even tastier if she cooks it. When Sylphie extends something else to Mel Lillet and asks how about this, Mel Lillet denies that it is a mushroom, and the girl widens her eyes in extreme surprise while he carefully looks at what she brought. She gazes at the plant, says it is not poisonous, so it can be eaten, but warns the taste will be too bitter, after which the girl trembles all over and still extends the plant to her boyfriend. She states that she does not believe they would want to eat something bitter, and Mel Lillet stubbornly insists that it is very nutritious, so they will gather as many plants as they can, and Sylphie begins to sulk indignantly. When it is already dusk outside, they all start preparing soup, and Mel Lillet stays and tries it with surprise, and then says that this soup is not bitter at all, so doubts dissipate. This time Sylphie, with tears in her eyes, begs, "If you try it, it will taste bitter." She still trembles, but tears are still visible in her gaze, while Lara grabs her portion like a wolf's maw and does not care. Laylat says that these plants are probably good for the skin. The girl is amazed and again asks the boy if it is true that the plants are really good for the skin, and he answers that yes, if they are cooked properly and left to stand. He smiles and tells the girl that she is already beautiful, but asks her to keep eating, while he involuntarily thinks that he resembles her father. The girl blushes, then replies that if the young man thinks so, she will eat these vegetables, so she awkwardly rustles on the plate and picks through the pieces, feeling uncomfortable. Then the girl instantly swallows everything left on her plate. The bitterness immediately hits her mouth, her body trembles, but she still chews and swallows the vegetables. Sarah asks if tomorrow they will move east again, and she is told yes. Then she eagerly eats meat and fish interestingly skewered on rods. Lillet shrugs evenly and says that they lack hiking equipment, but still need a cauldron, dishes, a knife and things, as well as a blanket for Silfa and Clara. Sylphie asks in surprise if he wants to go shopping in the city, and Mal replies that they will very soon come across a city. Sarah is chewing a chicken leg and says that there is a big city on the eastern border, after which she asks if it would suit them, and Mal Lilith clarifies whether she knows exactly where it is. She replies that she lived in the ruins on the outskirts, and it was there that illegal goods traders caught her, so Mal Lilith, surprised, asks if she knows the city, maybe she can lead them there. She admits that she has never been on the main street and always traveled only through dark alleys. Mal Lilith holds his chin and begins to think, and Sylphie anxiously asks if something is wrong with him. Mal sadly says that he just thought, if Clara recognizes these places, then maybe it would be better for them to part ways right there. Suddenly Clara blushes with shame and starts shouting that she does not want to go, clenching her fists in anxiety. She does not like this plan at all because she really wants to be with her new family. Clara calms down, speaks more quietly, and with pain in her voice admits that she has almost no good memories of this place. Sadness is clearly visible on her face, as she was persecuted simply for being Rajar. In fact, she lived in the city only because she had nowhere else to go. Mal and Sylphie look at her with pity, and Clara looks away and quiets her breath because she still hurts from what happened. She blushes even more, says embarrassedly that she also really likes it, and her cheeks flush with a blush as she shyly looks at the flame, as if gathering herself not to reveal her feelings. Clara gazes into the burning fire and quietly confesses that she really likes swinging in the wagon, hunting and cooking, and then eating together by the warm campfire. She smiles and says that she really likes being one family with her brother and Sylphie, so now she is incredibly happy. Now Lilat stops in surprise at the girl's words, smiles, and thinks that everything said is true because they really are family. In fact, the boy did not intend to tell anyone about his skill of evaluation except Sylphie, but after some thought, he decides to tell Clara as well, immersing her in the story of this skill and everything that happened after he acquired it. He emphasizes that because of this, no one should know about his skill of evaluation by X rank, so he asks Clara not to tell anyone. Clara, squeezing her fingers so that a crunch is heard, agrees to keep the secret and replies that the word is Rarajora. After some time, Clara falls asleep, covered with a blanket, and the sleepy sound of her snoring sounds so cute that the warmth of the fire seems even cozier. Mel throws logs into the fire so that it lasts until morning, and next to him Sylphie, sitting beside him, speaks quietly, after which in a few minutes Clara falls asleep even deeper, snoring cutely again. When they approach her homeland, she asks what he will do next, and he thinks while the twigs quietly crackle under the heat of the flame, and finally responds. He admits that he hadn't thought about it, then turns to Sylphie, smiles, and says, if she doesn't get tired of him, he can stay in his hometown. Sylphie blushes and asks if everything will really be all right, since then he will be far from home, and the young man answers yes. Ben says that he always had a dream to leave from there, and even if he suddenly wanted to return, he doubts that he could continue living the same way as before. He looks at the fire, smiles, and says that he has happy memories of this place. All the time spent with Sylphie, it almost doesn't matter where exactly he ended up, the main thing is to be next to her, and relief is visible in his gaze. Mel admits that he wants him and Sylphie to be a family, and Sylphie, deeply shocked, freezes for a moment, then reaches out to him and asks in surprise if he really intended to propose to her. Mel immediately blushes and panics, shouting no, he didn't mean that at all, because it's still too early to think about such things, and he puts his hands forward and starts waving them, showing his innocence and that he expressed himself incorrectly. Mel explains that the girl is also none other than a princess, so her parents might be against it, and meanwhile Clara continues to snore as if nothing is happening. Sylphie responds positively, blushes even more, lays her head on his shoulder, and quietly says that she is also not ready yet because she feels incredibly embarrassed. Still, Sylphie opens her eyes and says that when Mel told her he wanted them to become a family, she was truly happy. She says that if Mal Layla wants them to become a family, then she wants the same, and he suddenly realizes that these words are enough for her. He finds nothing more to add, because although his parents died long ago, he is still sure Sylphie has someone who supports her. She runs her fingers through his hair and replies that he is sure her memory will return, and then the girl begins to fall asleep, resting her head on the young man's shoulder. She agrees with Mal's words, slowly lowers her eyelids, and at that moment Mal Lilith gently throws a blanket over her, covering her up to the shoulder. He thinks that if he can master the skill of evaluation, then maybe he can restore her memories, and with a smile he realizes he has finally found a new goal. While he only has fragmentary information about the first queen, he He must improve his evaluation skill to the limit many windows with information flash before him, and he reviews them carefully and continuously while everyone sleeps, continuing to hone his analysis. The next day, Mal Lillet, Clara, and Sylphie arrived in a large city that buzzed with trade talks and the footsteps of passers-by, so the heroes went out onto a bright shopping street where people strolled in crowds. Mal Lillet threw on a hooded cloak so no one would recognize him, and explained that the cart would be under protection, so he suggested Clara go shopping, and at his words the girl literally beamed with joy, while Sylphie also hid under the cloak. Mal Lillet said that everything would be fine with Clara, but if they looked for him, they might also notice Sylphie, so he asked Sylphie not to take off the hood. The girl pulled it tighter and replied that she understood. After some time near the butcher's shop, Clara shouted and pointed with her paw, "Look, there's so much meat," and Mal Lillet promised that a little later they would get dried meat, and then the girl's eyes lit up, and her tail wagged vigorously with joy. But he suddenly pulled Clara away and reminded her that they came for clothes, dishes, and the most necessary things, not to linger near temptations, so he advised her to gather herself and move on. Suddenly Sylphie notices something else. Her pupils dilate, and they see a fountain, so Clara asks what this wonder is, and water flows right from that thing which Mal Lillet calls a fountain, and explains that it takes water from a nearby river. Sylphie shouts that she has never been here before, so she sees everything for the first time, and her voice trembles with delight. It is incredible. She already wants to splash in the fountain, but suddenly notices something else, turns to the boy and asks what happened, after which they approach. They approach the sword, and Mal Lillet leans down to read the inscription on the monument. The city is also known as the City of the Hero, the one who defeated the evil dragon, and here. It turns out that in this place he gave his spirit, fulfilling his duty and bringing peace to the world. But before that, the hero gathered his last strength and pierced the boulder with the sword, saying that the weapon is sealed by magic until the next hero appears, and Sylphie is deeply surprised. Mal Lillet continues to read the same inscription, and now every phrase sounds like a key to a mystery. Besides the hero's sword, everything around is entwined with myths and hidden riddles. The young man raises his gaze and stops his thought. Could he be the only one who managed to be evaluated, because some mysterious force affects him, saving him from the attempts of other evaluators? Fine, then he will not retreat. Finally, he managed to read the characteristics. The sword, which turned out to be the measure of the hero, costs 500 million units, has the highest levels of all parameters except magical attack, and the young man is even more amazed, since his own sword is just as perfect but also without an increase in magical attack. This is the very sword used by the hero of the land Drago. The magical power of defeated opponents can be transformed into a source of energy, and the young man cannot recover from the description until Carla understands what exactly the thing in the stone means. In the list of additional effects shines the rule. The sword never breaks, gives the user invulnerability for 15 seconds, hides the sword's traits from anyone except the owner, and if necessary also masks the status of the owner himself. Mal Lillet explains that the seal even allows her to change the owner's status, so it is really convenient. But while it is sealed, it cannot be used to break seals at least the same or higher status than the hero is required. Mal Lillet quietly objects that this is simply impossible, and in his voice sounds an uncertain, probably. The young man approaches a small plaque, reads the inscription, "If you can take this with you without feeling any embarrassment," and does not understand why the words sound so strange and in exactly this form. Clara willingly extends her hand and takes the artifact, and the young man awkwardly mumbles that it is easy for her to say. Then he shifts his gaze to Sylphie, asking what happened and if she really feels pain. Sylphie suddenly breaks the silence with a ringing cry and turns around in surprise because the boy called her. Clara immediately loses composure, nervously asks if the girl is okay, and Mal silently watches as tears flow from Sylphie's eyes. The boy tries to explain something and asks Sylphie to listen, but she replies that probably something got into her eye. Clara immediately asks if it hurts, but Sylphie denies it, says it doesn't hurt. The boy looks at Sylphie and sees in her status emotional excitement, so he understands. Her body is fine, and she just doesn't understand where these tears come from. The young man asks her not to scare him like that anymore. If he had read deeper, he would probably have figured out what exactly is happening, but even now it is at least obvious. There are no health problems, and he breathes out with relief. The girl smiles, apologizes for making everyone worry, and then suggests that everyone go shopping together. Lara cheerfully raises her hands, nods with enthusiasm, and sincerely agrees, while Sylphie and Mayer smile in response to her joyful reaction. Mal Lillet notices Sylphie and says she looks cute, then asks if he really thinks so in this dress, and at that moment a thought flashes through his mind. Everything looks perfect on this beauty. Hey, Lara approaches him and asks how she looks, and he carefully examines her and smiles, says she is very charming, but involuntarily thinks that with such a short haircut she looks a bit like a boy. Mal Leela looks at Lara, first blushes and smiles awkwardly, then suggests she take a jacket one size bigger, explaining it so awkwardly and sincerely that Carla immediately agrees with his words, nodding to support the young man's idea. Finally, they finish shopping. Clara carries a huge burden of bags with clothes on her back, and Mal Lilith asks if he should take part of the purchase and help the girl, but she doesn't understand his hint and confidently continues to carry everything herself without stopping. Clara assures in a serious tone that everything is fine and nothing is needed after all. She is stronger than her brother, so there is nothing to worry about, and then they relaxedly enjoy food at the stall, and the girls enthusiastically note that the meat is so tender and incredibly tasty. Mel Laylat also eats, keeping his own thoughts in mind. Thanks to his skill in evaluation, he will easily determine the best meat and not get fooled by an inflated price, and he also thinks how convenient it is to have this skill and control over what is offered to him. His cheeks puffed up from food, but suddenly the young man hears strange voices. They ask if this is Clara by any chance, and sharply turning around, he sees two men staring intently at him. Lara throws a furious and angry look at them, fiercely points her finger and shouts that they are the villains who sold her to the dealer with illegal goods, and The shouts back that she is talking nonsense and has completely lost her mind. Now Layloth begins to worry. People are already gathering around, and at this pace it will soon become clear that he is being sought, so the situation is escalating. They might even detain him for this mess. He decides to start the interrogation and shouts questions to these men, the Otto brothers, about where the golden idol of the Mother Earth goddess, stolen from Reginson's house, is hidden, and the young man is furiously angry, trying to accuse them of a whole bunch of crimes. One shouts how he found out, and the other immediately replies, "No one was supposed to know, but they really are brothers. One's name is Mato, the other's Rato. Their nicknames sound almost the same, and they themselves are scoundrels, the second and third Otto Trinity brothers." People began whispering that this is a trio of scoundrels, three brothers, but the eldest is not visible, and one of the other two confidently assures that they guessed this right away and immediately pointed at them. So they are called thieves, and the men look around fearfully and badly, while a crowd quickly gathers around. The two brothers break away, pushing through the way with their shoulders and looking around in panic, and Mal Lillet chases after them because he thinks he also needs to hide in this chaos, but he cannot just let go of those who treated Clara so badly. The brothers run away, pushing passers-by and shouting at everyone in a row, "Get out," and "Make way," while the crowd parts, but suddenly they are stopped by a tall man and one brother crashes into him, hitting the other as if knocked down. They ask him what he wants, and the second irritably demands, "Get out of the way." The men start swearing and hurling insults at the one they ran into, but then the stranger just smiles and rubs his chin, keeping a confident and cold expression on his face. Mal Lillet stops at a walking distance and carefully watches them as if evaluating every move, and the stranger, without lowering his gaze, politely apologizes and says that this is his job, after which he smiles crookedly and throws a condescending look from top to bottom, demonstrating his superiority. Suddenly he grabs both by the heads and presses them down, and the man still smiles peacefully, so the guy is shocked to realize how easily and quickly he neutralized two at once. Maulela stays in place and, reflecting on his own sharpness, quietly apologizes for his weakness, smiles awkwardly, and a drop of sweat rolls down his face as he tries to say something and stammers, falling silent from embarrassment. Maulela tells Clara that as a reward for her efforts she will be able to buy herself some meat, and at these words the girl's eyes light up. She clenches her fists and thanks him, and later receives a nice hot square piece of meat. A stranger picks up the criminals in his arms, and they struggle, shouting that it hurts, that their heads are about to split, and at that moment it becomes clear. He is not only strong, he is also extraordinarily tall. A man with horns on his forehead orders them to listen and asks if they really stole the golden statue of the Mother Earth goddess from the regent's house, and in pain the men scream, while he continues to smile. They have already confessed and screamed in delirium that it was indeed them, so he begs to be released. But that man squeezes their heads so painfully that tears stream abundantly from their eyes, and the stranger, without looking away, demands, "Where is that statue now?" They answer that the statue is buried in a stash under the floor, and the stranger only nods he understands everything, while Mel listens intently to every word. Suddenly, one of the men presses two heads together as if forcing them to agree, and he hoarsely says that he already understands them, but at that moment, the air thickens with the feeling of an inevitable blow. Now Mal Lillet tries to find out who this stranger is and learns that his name is Musashi Kaito. His status is impressive, and most importantly he has a unique talent, the art of two swords, which allows him to wield two blades simultaneously at the highest level of mastery. Besides this, Musashi Kaido has superhuman strength. It passively increases physical power and also has magic resistance that reduces damage from magical attacks. And among his limited skills, Gembushel stands out an ability that hardens the body upon activation. After activation, he also gains incredible agility, like a mountain deer. The next step becomes 3 times faster, so Mal Lillet clearly understands he has 3 unique abilities, and all of them combine remarkably well with his limited skills. Before him stood a first-class swordsman who specialized in combat without magic, and a bounty hunter tattoo was visible on his body. He looked as if he was still hesitating about his own identity, and Mal Lilac understood. Once he decides, it will become extremely dangerous. The swordsman was surprised how Mal Lilac could so quickly recognize that these two were criminals, and whether he would have to share the reward with him, so he quietly decides. He must leave immediately before the situation gets out of control. Musashi says with relief that he was lucky to come across the criminals so easily, and Kaido immediately replies that since he found them, he proposes to split the reward in half and asks if Mal Lilac agrees to this deal. Mal Laylet awkwardly refuses, saying there is no need to share with him, and Kaido responds with a joyful smile that it is even a bit awkward, although inside he wonders why the refusal somehow makes him wary, and agrees only until the first convenient moment, until he changes his mind. He decides finally, says that then he will go and hand these scoundrels over to the guards and return the stolen items, after which Mal Laylet directly asks him about this, and Kaido, barely smiling crookedly, immediately breaks into a sweat, and at that moment Mal Laylet feels that something is going wrong. Suddenly he apologizes and says that he will borrow Kaido's sword for a minute, grabs his weapon, turns around, and deflects the attack that was flying straight at him. It was an arrow shot by the eldest brother of the Otto brothers, the one he can hide, and at the same time his own trickster among the eldest Otto brothers, whose hidden movement has ranked D. The young guy uses his speed. He suddenly jumps forward and knocks the crossbow out of the villain's hands, so the latter, seeing this, is stunned and confused. The youth cuts the crossbow with his sword, then jumps on the man and pins him to the ground with his legs. The youth is already raising the sword to strike, but the man, choking on words, asks him to wait and trembles with sweat because he fears that this youth might even kill him. Suddenly the youth hit the man on the head. With the katana's hilt he immediately fainted, and Kaido was watching everything that was happening. Someone started clapping for Malia, and the boy flinched from surprise, already preparing for the worst, but it turned out to be Kaido. He said that Malia has incredibly fast movements and that the boy pleasantly surprised him. Kaido approached the youth and stated that he thinks the latter just moved using a skill similar to his, the agility of a mountain deer. After these words, he demonstrated it in practice, and the youth looked around and replied that the plan is indeed good. Then Kaido, slightly smiling, asked if the youth knows that for a samurai the weapon is part of himself, and that the weapon is an extension of the body, so taking it without asking is not very proper. Mal Lilat panicked, drew his sword, and began begging for forgiveness, but suddenly realized he was right. The samurai said he was lucky because he does not arrange such disputes, and added that this is an ordinary nameless blade, but if it broke, Mal would have to compensate for the damage. However, he held the katana quite skillfully, and the man himself was curious who taught him this, but the youth awkwardly hesitated because he could not honestly admit that he simply copied the skill. The samurai was embarrassed only for a moment. He scratched his chin and decided that the young man has a secret, then unexpectedly offered to keep the katana for himself, which made Mel freeze with surprise. The man assured that he had other katanas in reserve, and asked if the young man was confident in his choice, to which he replied that he had already earned well thanks to this sword, so, if he no longer needed it, he should sell it, and Mel Laylet carefully examined the katana and realized that it was very expensive. The samurai waved his hand, as if to say he would take care of matters, and went to his brothers, while Mel Laylet bowed and thanked him for the katana. Later Mel, Lilat, and Sylphie approached the carriage, but Marian and Josepha were already there, and Mel immediately understood. People had gathered near their coach, so at that moment the girl asked her companions if they were sure that this was exactly what had happened. The old man told Marian that he was sure the carriage belonged to this very church, and Mel Lillet squinted in surprise, suspecting whether the Branco appraiser was standing somewhere in a hood, while the young man hid behind a wall and closely watched the people. Joseph, folding his hands, proclaimed without any doubt, "In this city there is already a boy named Mel Layloth," and at that word Mel Layloth nervously looked around, not knowing what to do next, while Clara quietly tended to a small frog nearby. The young man thought that if there really was an appraiser among the people, Maybe they would believe him if he explained properly, but his confidence broke. Even if they believed, his skill level X meant that in the worst case they would catch him and immediately put him on the experiment table. He understood this could not be allowed, because he had promised to deliver Sylphie to her homeland, so he had to thwart any attempt to detain him and keep his word at all costs. At that moment the samurai tied up the brothers and hummed a cheerful melody, when suddenly a girl approached him, called him uncle, and smiling with curiosity asked what he was doing here in such a good mood. At first he called her a pest, then addressed her by name Lisa, and asked her not to call him uncle, because he had not yet crossed the 30-year threshold, and Lisa replied that he was 10 years older than her, so how could he not be an uncle? Then the girl asked who the Eli people were, pointing at the Otto brothers, and he replied that they were criminals who had stolen the golden statue of the Mother Earth Goddess, and she was outraged that he had already managed to take the entire trophy from the order he had just accepted. The samurai smiled and said it was not him the blow was dealt by a human boy, and then added that he did not need a share, so he gave him the entire reward, and the girl only muttered that there were very strange people in the world. The samurai told himself that he was a mysterious boy, and even in his thoughts boasted how confidently he held the katana, although he did not have time to show much, but his movements were exactly like in the style of two oni sabers, which made him doubt how exactly that human boy had mastered it. He recalls Mel's fight and wonders how an ordinary human boy could know a sword technique created exclusively for oni. He freezes for a moment in thought, whether Mel really is the owner of heavenly eyes, and as soon as this thought reaches him, his eyes sharply widen from too great a surprise, because heavenly eyes are considered a unique skill that, according to legend, belonged to the legendary hero R and his Drago. One glance is enough for him to deeply comprehend various arts, including fencing, and he literally masters complex high-level techniques in just a few days, while ordinary people need decades for that. If that young man really has heavenly eyes, then he could have already caused a lot of trouble, and this thought makes him bitter, because now he regrets. He should have at least fought a little with him. Lisa is scared of his reaction and asks what is happening to him. The samurai calms down and, looking straight ahead, explains that having such skills, he once went unarmed empty-handed, so there is conviction in his voice. This young man is truly a mystical type. Lisa calls him uncle again and asks why he is grumbling, and he asks her not to pay attention. Then he clarifies, let her say how much longer she intends to cling to him, and she replies that she already said until she finds a person. Lisa says that traveling requires a lot of money, so she looks for a job for him and takes her share from each of his earnings. The samurai replies that the job of a bounty hunter brings a lot of hatred from all kinds of scoundrels, and he does not really recommend sticking to this path, but Lisa insists. It is safer this way, so that no problems arise. Lisa asks further. The man himself said that he is not going on a bounty hunt, so is it really true? And he calmly answers that he is going. He clarifies whether that man really wants to fight the only heavenly eye of this kingdom, and the man smiles in response, saying yes, the royal eye still remains the king. The eye of heaven means genius, and the man explains. His power appeared only thanks to persistent work, so now he wants to fight a genius and defeat him with his own strength. Lisa giggles and, mockingly smiling, informs him of good news. There was a murder of a priest, a kidnapping, and a theft, so he sharply says that this is a first-degree crime. Lisa confidently asserts that it is true and explains. The culprit is currently hiding in this very city, and the samurai frowns and mutters that this time, probably, he won't take it, there is enough money for now, so they again find themselves in a strange, relaxed tension. Lisa quietly laughs and says that a surprise awaits him on the trail of this criminal. Some order of knights has already arrived in the city, and she, with the look of an expert, asks which one and who arrived he guesses. At first he pieces together the logic and understands, then suddenly is surprised, instantly recalling the deputy captain of the Order of the Red Phoenix Mariana Verdemian. Lisa smiles and replies that he guessed correctly. The brilliant Lady Saber, the heavenly eye, and the samurai shakes his chin, pondering whether they arrived in the city specifically to hunt the killer of that priest. Lisa smiled and suggested, if he catches the criminal first, she will agree to a duel as a reward, and the samurai jokingly replied that in the worst case he will fall flat and beg. He refuses the thought of retreating, so people around might decide that Lisa is afraid to fight him, but her pride in fencing duels is usually too inflated for her to give up, and even then she won't have to hold back, and the samurai doesn't mind falling to his knees. The samurai smiled and told Lisa that it was wonderful, after which he suggested catching the criminal, and the girl gladly laughed in response. She is pleased that he agreed to her proposal. Lisa explained that, as far as she knows, the criminal kidnapped an elf girl, and maybe she is the one she is looking for, so the samurai thought and recalled Sylphie next to Clara and Mel, asking if it means the same name and face. Lisa asked if there was any other information about the criminal, and said that he is a 15-year-old boy named Mel Lila, a completely ordinary teenager, and the samurai, hearing this, involuntarily tensed, trying to piece together what he heard. The samurai continues to wander in thoughts about the 15-year-old boy and the ordinary teenager, and he cannot let go of the question, could such a person really somehow kill a priest? It is too unusual. He reasons that for an ordinary child this is a very strange act, because the boy really looks about 15, and next to him stands an elf girl. Then the samurai suddenly remembers Mel, and suggests that maybe this is the same boy he saw quite recently, and Lisa looks at him in surprise and cannot understand what he is talking about, standing near the cart. After the cart turned, Mal, Sylphie, and Clara still do not take their eyes off to the side, and the samurai estimates how much longer they will stand like that. If at least one leaves, then there will be fewer of them, so in his thoughts he hopes they can break through to the cart. As if agreeing to split into two groups, Marion says it's a good idea, and Clara suddenly steps forward and asks her brother what these people want from their carriage. Mal Laylat is stunned. Marion is even more confused, and the girl freezes, not knowing how to respond. Carol sharply turns around and sees the boy with Sylphie behind the corner, and also Clara. She stands as if cut into the void, simply in the space. Marion is so scared that she trembles. She notices cat ears, and Gozov cautiously asks if this is the young man Mal Laylat, to which he instinctively steps back. He steps back even further, and Gozov says he has a few questions, but Mal Lilith screams in panic that it is creepy here, so he tries to run away and shouts if he can leave without problems. Mal Lilith asks to wait, but against the background Marion trembles and stubbornly declares that she will go after them herself. Joseph explains to her that there were beast people nearby, and he cannot allow them to investigate everything alone, and Marion still trembles and replies that she is the fastest and most agile, so she confidently adds, she will manage and will not delay them. He orders him to wait here, and she asks the old man to go and inform the other participants, who are checking the city and other taverns. He bows and promises to do everything as she commands. Sylphie remembers Clara and confidently says she will not retreat as a worthy heir to the hero's will, but even despite the determination, drops of sweat appear on her face. Ulfi asks Mel to wait, asks what he is going to do, picks her up, apologizes, and admits that they have very little time, and the girl blushes and replies that he completely misunderstood her. He blushes, says he will run with her in his arms, then asks if it is hard for him, to which she replies, everything is fine because he read Clara's abilities, so she seems very light in his embrace, and he thoughtfully weighs the next step. The news is this: they have a red knight on their tail, Marion Verdemian, a famous fencer, and by her appearance and behavior, she gives the impression of a good person whose unique fencing techniques are already alarming. Her technique is as masterful as that of Hero R. Drago, Heavenly Eyes. From the very first glance, she understands the essence of the move, finds knowledge and gains experience, and then chooses the most optimal training path, also thanks to a subtle sense of rhythm, quickly learning to control the tempo. This allows her to instantly process information and predict the target's movements, and the skill is so rare that with 3 effects it seems similar to his former assessment skill, through which that guy once broke out in a sweat. When everything connected, the situation immediately worsened. He kept rushing, pressing in his mind that he needed to hurry, and Clara was catching up with them, leaping over the distance. Marion begins to approach them and suddenly calls them to wait, asking them to hold on, and Mal Lila wonders if this means she has already caught up, or if Hethy are hurrying too much, and whether even Clara's acceleration couldn't stop her, while he looks at Marion and catches a pause. By the fountain he stops and thinks of only one thing: to cross the square with the fountain, get to the next street and leave the city, so he will have to leave the cart. Marion continues running after them, again asking them to wait, and suddenly jumps out with all her might, leaps over them, lands ahead so sharply that the ground cracks, and sternly asks whom she ordered them. While Lilat and Sylphie tremble with fear, he steps back and calls Marion a monster, and the girl stands up, puffs her cheeks, and says embarrassedly that it is very rude. Now Lilat apologizes surprisedly and awkwardly when he sees Marion grumbling in a puffy tone, and he does not understand why she is behaving so strangely. The girl says she just wants to talk, asks him to listen, and promises that she will explain everything herself. Marion Verdemian herself, like the vice-captain of the Red Phoenix Knights, she asks them to calm down and adds that she does not intend to arrest them. Mel Lila thinks to himself, he is sure he understands, because she really looks like a good person, but will she believe his version of events if she sees his skill, because she can instantly and radically change her mind? At first, Lilette quietly says that he is very sorry, and then Clara suddenly appears between them and asks if they have finished playing. Clara unexpectedly begins to cry, screaming and throwing herself into Mel's arms, and everyone around immediately blushes. And Clara herself does not understand what exactly she did wrong until Mel confusedly holds her tightly and tries to calm her down. Paul does not understand what is happening and tries to diffuse the tension with the words, "Everything is fine," asks the girl to calm down, but at that moment Marion turns pale and a chill runs over her skin. At this moment Sophie bursts out in irritation, puffs out her lips and cheeks, while Clara remains standing still, completely stunned. Mal Lilette reads Marion's characteristics and sees that she is 17 years old and is terrified of cats, so he carefully avoids approaching directly. Seeing this, Marion looks at Mal Lilette and asks for help. Marion apologizes and says that it seems she has lost control again, and Mal Lilette replies that everything is fine, but in his thoughts he reflects, Clara is not a cat, she is a tigroid person, and he still does not understand what is so scary about her. Layla thinks that this is probably her weak spot, and Mal Lilette asks if she wants to talk about the incident that happened in the church. She says yes, and he finally takes a breath to start the story. Mal Lilette says that day he went to the church for a blessing ceremony, then describes what happened, but deliberately hides the truth about his skill and about who Sylphie really is. Marion smiles as if everything is finally coming together, and says that he probably went through a very hard time because of it, asks if he was afraid, and when he denies, saying he was not afraid, but now everything is fine, her voice becomes warmer. While Layla thinks that she is definitely a good person, as one would expect from someone capable of becoming a heroine, Mal Lilette changes one word to goddess, and the girl smiles sweetly, so much so that it seems to him as if he is dreaming of something beautiful. Marion distracts him and says that she will still have to write a report and hold official hearings, but for now suggests he return to the hotel. Lilette realizes that this was bound to happen and sighs. He is very sorry, but he will get into trouble as soon as someone finds out about his unique talent. She herself is surprised by her own words and sharply turns around. He instantly turns around and asks what she is talking about, and then someone appears nearby and announces that they have been found. After that, a man with cold audacity throws out, "Who would have thought that he is a priest's killer?" Marion turns around with everyone, and in the crowd a bounty hunter becomes visible, Musashi Kaido. He smiles and assures that appearances can be deceiving and fixes his gaze on those present. Kaido says he is very sorry, but they will still have to arrest him and take him into custody without demanding, not to resist, let him resist as much as he wants. He draws 2 katanas and prepares to fight, and Marie takes a step forward as if ready to stop the fight at any cost. When Marion comes out, she locks Mel and his group herself and asks them to wait because she does not understand where he got this information, but she is still sure. Mel is a victim, so she will take him with her. Kato asks if Marion really wants to stop him, and he replies, he does not care who she is, but if she has taken the side of a criminal, then she is a criminal too. While Lilette reads thoughts and stubbornly insists that he does not care about killing a priest, he wants to fight with heavenly eyes and does it as if he has long been waiting for this moment. The bad Mar Lilette wonders if his real target is Marion. Marion shouts to him that this is a misunderstanding, but he cuts her off. He did not ask for this, and they immediately get into a fight. Mal Lilette thinks on the go about what to do, because this is his chance to escape, while Musashi meanwhile covers the pressure with a furious shout relentlessly, blow after blow. It seems Musashi really wants to fight Marion, and now she finally understands the truth. He will not be charged as a criminal, because in the end he was just scared of Musashi's attack and therefore ran away. Yes, yes. Marion recognizes this technique and asks if he is the wandering bounty hunter, master of 2 swords Kaido, to which he replies that she can call him that, and at this moment they both hold their blades in taut readiness. He smiles, suddenly launches an attack, and says that although he does not like it, Marion is mistaken. He is not a criminal, so the boy is only a suspect, and she must protect him from these words. A troubling thought nests in her mind. She thinks this is terrible and must be stopped immediately, but as Kaido twists his movements like a nimble mountain deer, Marion sees and understands. The 2-handed style is convenient for breakthrough attacks, so she prepares to parry the blows. Kaido smiles crookedly, lunges at her, and warns that she has underestimated the masters of 2 swords and will pay for it, and the girl almost trembles with fear from his gaze and words. He draws another sword and promises to show her the power of Kaido's 2-sword style, after which he throws the blade straight at her, making Marion afraid of the attack. She might not have time to block it. In a moment Marion notices another sword flying straight at her side, sharply leans back and manages to dodge, so the blade flies past, and then she decides. If she could dodge one sword, she can parry the other. She shifts her gaze to the cyborg Kaido and immediately sees another sword there. He has two blades in his hands and one hidden in his chest, which makes the air tense to the limit. Suddenly Mal appears right in front of them. The young man parries Kaido's strike with unwavering confidence, using the sword that Kaido just gave him, and from the surprise Marion involuntarily blushes. Mal Lilat calls Kaido uncle and says that if he so badly wants to fight, he can test her strength in a competition, saying this very seriously. When the samurai steps away from them, Mariana freezes in stupor, and a faint blush appears on her cheeks because she does not understand what exactly is happening and why Mel is protecting her. Then Lilat tells him that he actually understands everything. He just wants to fight the owner of the heavenly eyes, and the young man is insanely angry. This is visible from his sharply tense face. The man, staring intently at the events, rubs his chin, thinks, and says that Mal Lila just used the mount and deer stride technique, so he would not. He would not have time to figure out all the details so quickly, and this only confirms that he carefully reads the situation by the opponent's intentions. He smiles and says that he understands everything. Mailot is the owner of the heavenly eyes, which means the guy simply read that man and his train of thought. Marion begins to see the meaning of what happened. The boy's skill is the heavenly eyes, but she does not believe it and considers it impossible. Then Lilet turns to Marion and says that he will fight alone, so he asks her not to interfere. But Marion, although she swears to be silent, still tries to say something to the boy, and the samurai cuts her off with a phrase, not letting her finish. The samurai decides that he can use the two-handed style even with one sword, and doubts, could he really have decided to fight alone, and is he really that foolish? Ado rushes into attack and shouts what he will do next, and Mel Lila, as Musashi once explained, read his double-edged technique so now he can predict movements and manage to stop the attack. After a few strikes, Mal Lilat looks at the sword and decides that everything is fine. This distance between them is enough to reach the sword that Morian managed to avoid, so he runs to the weapon on the ground and stretches out his hand, trying to grab it. Suddenly, the free sword begins to electrify, and Mal Lilat wonders if this is a magical skill bullet, until he sees the blade spinning on the ground and darting in an unknown direction, scattering sparks like lightning disappearing from sight. The sword flies back to its owner, and the samurai stops it in flight by pressing the blade with his boot. Mel Lilat asks if he has an assistant, and Kaido replies that he did not ask for help, so this is her selfish intention, as he himself also wanted to fight one-on-one. He asks if it is true that he is a little angry, and at that moment Lisa is sitting in the bushes, holding a pistol at the ready. Ease Amurai smiles again and says what happened happened, so nothing can be done about it, and probably already decides to stop the fight because his partner rushed to help. Suddenly the man realized something, and told the boy that he just used mount and deer step, but this skill has a 15-minute interval, so it can only be used once every 15 minutes, and this amazed him greatly. Now Laylat flies further with the same skill and shouts that this is not the end yet, and the samurai is surprised that the boy used it again, so Gates of the Deer Mountain. But not that much time has passed. He says that Mel rushes forward, already knowing what awaits him, so it gives him pleasure. Mal Lilat now thinks that, like Marion, this man is hard not to succumb to even with only a sword, and the young boy is full of determination. He understands that only one sword remains. If avoidance is impossible, he will go and face the danger as soon as it stands against him. Mal Lilat combines the mountain deer step and the Genbu armor, rises into the air, and rushes forward with a fist, and his face shows that this is a strike of incredible power, requiring colossal physical strength. The man flinches, but in a moment Mal's fist appears right in front of his face. Kaido deflects the blow with his sword, but the blade cracks. Mal splits it, and it shatters. Mel begins to strike relentlessly blow after blow, and the man, clutching his face with his hands, tries to defend himself, because he is sure that Genbushel can be used up to twice a day without breaks. His ability lasts only 10 seconds, but the boy has long been hitting Kaido in the face with this very technique, and that time has long passed. Reidu delivers several consecutive strikes, and Mel Lila instantly realizes the skill was used a second time, so Musashi will not be able to use it today, but the hand does not stop. He continues to hit. After that, he rushes at two Yuyuzashi, hitting with a body enhanced by the gate of the mountain deer and the shell of Genbu. If you read and copy enemy skills, they can be used without limits, and the man falls to the ground, but the hero thinks he is just reading these techniques again and again, so the attack continues until he is shaken by a belated mistake. He finally realizes that there is no more defense and makes the last punch with the same phrase, after which everything is over. Zero Dills delivers a devastating blow to the enemy. Yusashi falls to the ground and breathes heavily, and Mal Lilith feels as if his head is about to split. It seems he took too much in such a short time. Silence falls over the place of the clash, and Marion realizes Mal Lilith is so strong that she wonders who he really is. Now Layla reads Kaido's feelings. He is trembling and in pain. He realizes that his hand is broken, and even if he moves carefully it will still hurt, so he slowly crawls away, hoping to escape. Now Lilith doubts, will Kaido really leave just like that immediately? He will not let him, not the one who attacks people without reason. Suddenly Marion notices danger, shouts to Mel to be careful, and pushes him out of the line of attack, and she herself manages to take the hit. Without taking his eyes off the threat, Mel activates the gate of the mountain deer, restraining the attack and covering Marion at the last moment. He covers Marion with his body and tightly squeezes him in safe embraces using the Genbushel technique, not allowing the blow to break through further. The shockwave makes the heroes grimace. The girl chokes on a scream of horror and grabs her rescuer as if she will never let go. Sylphie and Clara look closer with surprise, and Sylphie immediately begins to protest, not believing her own eyes. The girl feels a wave of pleasure, as if the softness around suddenly became warmer and more pleasant. Mariana opens her eyes and looks around confusedly, not understanding where this unexpected tenderness came from. Looking more clearly, they both instantly realize everything. They are lying on top of each other, faces pressed so close that they can see each other's breath. Sylphie, all in red, sharply breaks the silence from surprise. She is overcome with anger. She starts shouting, and Clara behind freezes confusedly, not managing to understand what is happening. Layla thinks in shock that this is an incredibly strange situation. He accidentally fell on Marion, and at that moment their lips touched, but Mariana is already lying with her eyes and blushing with shame for what happened earlier. The girl tries to say something, but the young man instantly steps back scared and asks what exactly she wanted to ask, and Marion with closed eyes asks if he can get off her. In panic, the young man raises his hands, apologizes and tries to justify himself, saying that it must be hard for him, when suddenly Clara appears and calls him brother, which scares Mel even more, and Clara, stopping in front of them, asks what is going on here. The young man turns pale and asks if it is true that he was the one licking that little sister, but at that moment, Clara's eyes shine brightly, and two cute fangs peek out of her mouth. Mel immediately blushes with shame, uncertainly says no, and that she misunderstood everything. Clara declares that this sister smells so delicious, no worse than Sylphie, so she also wants to try, sticks out her tongue and is about to lick the girl, but shifts her gaze to Marion and realizes that something is wrong. Mal Lilith notices the warning that she must not let cats come close and must not touch them directly, and Clara at that moment says that Sister Marion has lost consciousness. The girl trembles with fear right before their eyes. Now Leela understands that she was kissed by a cat, and by the sensations it was by no means the best experience, but suddenly she notices something else. Zero orders Clara to retreat, and they both leap to cover a huge distance, instantly changing position to gain seconds. Sarah tries to comprehend what happened, but at that moment they see. Marion slowly and silently rises from her place, and Mal immediately feels something is wrong and realizes the situation is getting out of control. Mariana sharply stands up, and her gaze is completely different. The young man notices that combat skills have increased, but the mind is sacrificed for strength. Activating the rank skill takes away all clarity of thought completely, and this becomes her main drawback. After activation, the skill can no longer be cancelled at will, and this is another minus. Mariana lets out a fierce, wild scream like a wild animal. Clara and Mal Leela are frightened, and the young man understands this is definitely not a woman's scream, so Clara covers her ears and also starts screaming in fear. Marion completely loses self-control. She grabs a sword and starts hitting Mal, but Mal definitely dodges her strike, misses, and the blade cuts into the ground and carves a deep furrow in the stone. Glancing at the girl, Mal realizes that Marion has completely lost control and wonders if this can even happen because of one kiss. Meanwhile, she realizes her own mistake and, embarrassed and stumbling, endlessly whispers, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." At that moment, Clara falls to the ground and loses balance, and Mal Leil catches Marion in his thoughts. He wants to kill the cat, and for a moment everything tightens with anxiety inside him. She instantly understands that this is very bad. Mal shouts to Clara to just run away, and Clara in response screams that this is extremely scary. Mal Lilith picks up a small stone and throws it at Marion. It hits her right in the head. The girl turns around in anger, and Mal Lilith loudly shouts that he is here. At the same time, Clara flees the battlefield, and tears roll down her eyes. Marion again sees her true motives and understands. She is going to kill the shooter and remove the obstacle. Mel thinks that at least he helped Clary escape from here, but now he is gnawed by another question: what to do with Marion, since talking to her is clearly pointless. If he tries to copy the girl's skill, their powers will equalize, but then he himself will lose his mind. So he shouts to Sylphie that it is extremely dangerous here and she needs to hide. And at that moment, he doubts whether he has Musashi's skill enough, when suddenly someone is approaching them right now and calling Sylphie madam. Mel Laylate immediately reads her characteristics. Her name is Lisrat Kivel. She is a guard of the Kingdom of Filians and a companion of Musashi Kaido, and the girl continues to cry but does not stop smiling, with a blush clearly visible on her cheeks. Sylphie awkwardly asks if they know each other, and as soon as Lisa hears this, her face instantly changes. She becomes very scared with fear. Lilette again calls Sylphie mistress, but does not understand why the girl looks at her confused and does not recognize her at all. Now Lilette shouts at Sylphie, demanding that she immediately go with her. Haya tries to object, but Lisa stands up for Sylphie, raises a weapon aimed at the boy, and thinks that he is the one who killed the priest and the one who defeated Musashi, while Mal Lilette shouts that he will be fine, so let Sylphie go with Lady Lisra. Sylphie agrees because she was told to, and Lisa hesitates, shockingly asking herself if this man really was supposed to be bad, and how he knows her name, while Mal Lilith sees the pistol in Lisa's hands and realizes, Mary shot earlier. Marion bursts out screaming with rage, Mal Lila tears into pieces, and Lisa finally realizes the full horror of what happened. Mariana is already stepping towards Lisa with a sword, while Murjana holds Mel at gunpoint, then suddenly turns her head to Murjana, and does not understand why she is running straight at her. Lisa points the pistol at Murjana and asks who she is, but Murjana looks too angry. She does not hear warnings, and Lisa tries to stop her, finding out what she wants from everyone, because Murjana is already set to attack and wants to destroy her targets. Lilette watches the fight and suddenly realizes that Marion reacts to the magic pistol, so she shouts to Lisa, "Don't shoot her, throw away the pistol and run," and Lisa obeys. And Lisa does not hear him and continues shooting, warning Marion not to approach, while Marion skillfully dodges, until Lisa finally comes to the conclusion. She cannot hit and does not understand why exactly. Lilette understands that thanks to the heavenly eyes he can predict the trajectory of the bullets, and at that very moment, Lisa begins to realize that it is futile, absolutely futile, because every one of her shots is anticipated in advance. Then she suddenly turns, firmly embraces Sylphie, and convinced that this will save Lady Sulfina, asks her forgiveness, while Sylphie herself remains in place, frozen in confusion. When Mel steps forward, the young man spreads his arms and covers the girls, understanding that he can take the hit himself from the Genbu projectile, and Lisa, turning around, sees this and does not understand what he is really doing. Marion begins to tremble before him, and Mal Laylat looks on with surprise. In Marion's eyes, a scene emerges where Mal Laylat protects Lisa and Sylphie, so the girl freezes, and the boy tries to comprehend what is happening. While Lilette looks full of hope, Lisa and Sylphie watch in embarrassment, not understanding exactly what to expect next. Marion falls with the thought that she does not want to kill anyone, and decides to put the sword aside. It seems to her as if she has lost consciousness and gone mad, so she struggles with herself, trying to cope with the attack. Lilette screams at Lisa in desperation, demanding that she take Sylphie and leave here immediately. Lisa fights back and sharply replies that Lilette should not order her what to do, after which she covers Sylphie with her hands and activates the Wind Spirit skill cloak. Marion loses her temper again. She turns to Sylphie and Lisa and rushes after them, and Mal realizes that Marion chose the wrong direction and already reaches out to her, trying to intervene. Mal tries to figure out what exactly he can use the pipe or the scabbard, but unfortunately is too late. Lisa freezes in shock because she sees what is right in front of her. Michael clasps his hands together and, relying on Lisa's skill, releases the bullet she created while everything around still hesitates in tension. This shot momentarily caught Marion's attention. She flinched, then sharply turned around as if catching a threat out of the corner of her eye. Lisa wonders if he can repeat the same magic bullet technique just as well, and even with bare hands, and Sylphie is also amazed by this. Mal Lilith tells Marion that he is more dangerous to her than anyone else, and adds quite seriously, he is really capable of using the magic bullet like her, and even without weapons with bare hands. Lisa tries to understand who this man is, and Marion growls at him in response and, clenching herself angrily, rushes forward. Lilette shudders and thinks about how much his hand hurts because he reinforced Genbu Turtle's defense, yet the blow still echoed with unbearable pain, and after the shot, abrasions remained on his hands. Kaido breaks off in the air like the echo of an unspoken power. Edo asks Mal if he is stupid, since he should run away. She is invincible, and in a frenzy state, he won't be able to defeat the owner of the heavenly eyes, to which Mal Lilith mutters that this is nonsense, then firmly adds, he really wants to escape but cannot leave Marion in such a state. The young man stubbornly holds his gaze, completely confident in himself, so Kaido says that maybe she will come to her senses if he kisses her again, and the mention of the fairy tale about Sleeping Beauty makes the young man tremble with panic. Can he do this with her? Determination flares in the young man's eyes, and he thinks about how to pull that angry girl out of her frenzy, having already read her characteristics, yet still trying to look deeper. The young man looks at Layla, who is again in an unbearable frenzy, and thanks to his skill understands. Mel's kiss will bring her out of the wild state and restore clear mind, and Layla Mel suddenly becomes embarrassed and does not understand why his name is even in this story, but notices something and stops thinking. The young man again intently gazes at the girl in unbearable frenzy, also not understanding why his name is there, but notices something that still troubles him. Mariana attacks again. The girl swings and sharply strikes forward, and the young boy manages to catch the fallen samurai, and his face shows haste and fear. Then the boy throws Kaido aside. The man shouts and declares that this is extremely cruel, and at that moment, Marion attacks the place where the boy and Kaido had just been. Ado falls headfirst, slaps the ground, and awkwardly asks Mel if he could do it softer, but the boy still ignores him. He is too focused. Mal Laylit, looking at Mariana, immediately decides that she is attacking from a blind spot. He barely manages to dodge because her heavenly eyes and berserk state make her a dangerous opponent, and glancing at the ruined ground, he thinks she is truly incredibly strong. In berserk, she is driven by the desire to annihilate evil, so Mal Laylit looks at the ruins again and is finally convinced. Her heavenly eyes and berserk rage make her a formidable adversary. Glancing at the girl, she understands that, although it is hard for her to restrain herself, she holds on by willpower so as not to hurt people, and even assumes her power may be no less than that of the hero. Tim Mariana tries again to say something or shout, but Mal Lilith apologizes to her, and his face looks truly unhappy. The young man looks at Marion's angry eyes, touches his own face with his hand, and thinks that now, with his skills, he can read all the information about her. All the information about the girl flows in the young man's head, as if it appears next to him. He read the inscription, exhaled, and immediately thinks, now he is as strong as Marion, so he has effectively gained a status equal to the hero. While Layla runs straight to the sword that the girl stuck in the ground, the young man suddenly grabs. He grabs the hilt and instantly concludes, Marion should have pulled this sword out from the start, and now he is trying to do it instead of her. But the sword does not give way no matter how much he pulls. He cannot pull the blade out of the ground, and this confuses him greatly. Mal thinks that this cannot be true, and with a decisive jerk tries to pull out the sword, while Marion in the background is already preparing to attack, and he is fully aware of this. Marion looks at him with hatred, and this fills Mal with horror. He shudders, frightened to trembling. Now Layloth recalls the girl's words, how she frowned and reproached him for rudeness, how she said that he feels heavy at heart, and he grabs the sword with full confidence, deciding to pull it out to return her clear mind. The situation suddenly becomes extremely serious, and he calms down and tells her that he will manage. Mal closes his eyes, briefly catches control over his breathing, and then carefully examines the sword itself. He needs to assess it, to read in every line. The hero needs to immerse himself as deeply as possible into this sword, into its very essence, into its past, to understand what it truly conceals. Suddenly he notices another person ahead, before whom stretches a whole mountain of various monsters. He wears a long cloak, and in front of him rises a huge and shining sword. The young man tries to comprehend exactly where he has ended up now, and by what strange means he rolled here. The youth notices this man, then his gaze falls on the sword in his hand, and he sees everything more clearly than any nightmare. He sees countless different fragments from the sword's own memories, as if flashes after flashes emerge in the darkness. All battles, skirmishes, duels, and great fights, the protagonist has already seen everything, and Mal Lilith understands. This sword was kinder than all, because it killed more enemies than anyone, saved more people than anyone, but never found friendship with anyone, and this is what he sees in the next flash. He sees Drago right before him, and suddenly realizes. His only comrade was only the cursed steel of the sword, so thoughts grow heavier from this very loneliness. He believes that this man is terribly lonely, since Drago was ordinary, alive 24 years old and bore the title of hero. Despite this, Drago had countless enemies, and behind him rose a whole mountain of corpses, evidence of the cruel price of every victory. Having defeated thousands of demons, he saw tens of thousands before him, and each time proved. He was incredibly inventive in swordsmanship up to the battle with the dragon, huge as a mountain and fierce as catastrophe itself, which far exceeded the youth. The Battle of Pierce lasted 3 days and 3 nights, but in the end the hero, borrowing the power of the gods, plunged his sword straight into the head and killed the dragon. But the victory did not bring simple relief. Although he tore apart his own flesh, he failed to destroy the soul, and with great difficulty he managed to seal it. But the price of victory was a curse laid upon the hero. He was swallowed by the abyss of chaos, and since then he was tormented by endless sufferings throughout his life, bringing unbearable pain. Drago tells Malu, this is half of his life, and now it is clear how such a price is paid not only by him, but also by everyone nearby. Drago's life became part of Malu, as if the young man saw those events with his own eyes, and although he was very tense, the hero himself stood before him. This is not a legend. This man really killed the dragon, and behind your young man now stands he. You just need to listen to the whisper, and it will become clear that there is no deception here. People really have a soul after death it leaves the body, and the one who is gone is awaited by eternal torment, so even our forces will not be saved from these powers. Lars Drago asks if he understands. The owner of this saber is doomed to an unhappy fate. The young man holds the sword to Malu with a serious look and tries to explain that it can be incredibly dangerous, so he asks if he has enough strength to bear the burden of this fate, and if not, let him leave here immediately. The man speaks dead seriously, and the boy answers him the same way. He runs his hand along the blade, declares that if fortune is favorable, he will live his life without seeing the end of this world, after which he points the sword at the interlocutor and demands what his answer will be. Leela looks at the sword blade and levels her gaze. He cannot leave. Lars Drago says that the answer was given without hesitation, and tenderly notes that this is even commendable, so he suggests he follow his advice and leave this place. But the young man stubbornly replies that he also cannot. Lars Drago asks in surprise why, and the boy cuts off that the reason is this burden of fate. He reaches for the sword and resolutely declares that he must save Marion. He is absolutely serious and emphasizes that he came here not out of duty, but for his own reasons. Little Lilith asks if that is bad, and seeing his smile understands. He says not at all. He closes his eyes and admits that once he promised himself to save the world, but in reality, he fought only because he wanted to. Now he is gnawed by the thought of whether he is capable of renouncing this inevitable fact. The man opens his eyes and admits that what really impresses him is how the young man honestly looks at himself. Mal Lilith looks around in surprise and glances at Ars Drago, then after a pause asks if he can ask one question. Without waiting for permission, he asks if Ars Drago has any pangs of conscience, and meanwhile carefully gazes at his own reflection in the blade of the sword, as if hoping to hear an answer immediately. The young man asks his question, and Rs Drago clarifies whether he regrets anything in his life, to which he answers affirmatively, as if confirming the very essence of the question. Mars Drago says he will not talk about a full life, but overall he is satisfied with everything, and Mal Lilith asks if even despite the difficulties he still does not regret, and he answers, yes, because he was weak enough to seal the evil dragon. Mal Lilith cannot understand how a legendary hero can be weak, so he glances at his stats and sees that most of the S ranks are marked with minuses, so his strength barely reaches the level of heroes. A table with characteristics silently flows before him, emphasizing the difference between the dream of power and the real numbers. Lilith emphasizes, Drago R's unique Heavenly Eyes technique has only a C rank, and from this it becomes even clearer how everything turned out differently than expected. Mariana is 1 level higher, and from a single glance at the description it becomes clear. The effect is weaker, so Ars Drago asks the young man if he has read this, and the young man answers affirmatively and admits that he really studied Ars Drago's characteristics, beginning his explanation. The young man says that just reading is not enough to defeat the dragon, you need to be able to seal it, and reading the dragon is equivalent to dying. To this, he clarifies what exactly Ars Drago means, and Mal Lila considers such words too harsh. Ars Drago smiles and advises him to read this and eat it. If he can, then he is truly a strong person, and orders him to hold on to this thought, because he is sure the young man will cope even with what was only within the power of the past hero. Ars Drago says it would be good for the young man to read once and steal it to feel the curse on himself, and Mal Lila asks what exactly the man means. She thinks Ars is talking about the dragon, and clarifies, saying the man did not say the curse was terrible. Mars Drago calms him down and asks him simply to believe in himself, because even for him it was not easy to seal this dragon at the time he felt the futility of trying to defeat it, and adds that the previous hero experienced the same, so he asks, what if two heroes appeared at once? Lilat surprisingly recounts R's assumption that the dragon might have had a double, and carefully watches the interlocutor's reactions. He asks what this could mean, and Drago, adopting a serious tone, says he will never see him again, so let him speak directly, and warns Mal Laylad, one must be extremely careful with fairies. The young man does not understand what was said, and clarifies whether those very fairies forged his sword, to which Drago replies that the creatures are definitely not on their side, but they cannot be called enemies either, so the young man can use them to the fullest. Finally, it is time to say goodbye. Drago says it's time, hands the boy the sword, and completely without joking, asks if he intended to pull it out, looking straight into his eyes. The young man takes the sword from Drago's hands, and confidently replies that he will definitely pull it out, as if he already feels the moment when the power will start working. Drago tells him that right now he only has accelerated thought speed, so he asks him not to relax after getting the sword, and the boy is surprised to see that he really holds the sword, hears Drago's words, and nods in agreement. The hero explains that although the young man does not want this, soon he will fall under the power of inevitable fate, will resist it, and the burden of this fate will be unbearable for him. Ahead lies a very difficult trial, and he will have to gather himself and endure. He must gain such power to break free from the yoke of cruel fate, otherwise the trial will become a trap with no way out. Drago says this quite seriously, and wants to convey absolutely everything to the boy, while Mal Lilith only thinks that he does not know what awaits ahead, so he will solve problems as they arise, because under any circumstances he does not want to feel pain, holding the sword in his hands and listening carefully to Drago. Drago smiles and says how optimistic Mal Lilith is, even admits that he is a little envious of his attitude towards life, and looks calm, as if finally freed from something, when suddenly Mal begins to fly, and this terribly frightens the boy. Drago orders the young man to move on, because he has gained divine eyes that surpass the heavenly, and calls Mel Leluda the owner of these divine eyes, while he flies upward with the sword, not understanding the words and asking which exactly heavenly eyes are meant and why he is called their owner. Drago explains that he is the only one in this world who has such power, so it gave him a special X rank, and Mal Lilith, unable to hold back, clarifies whom exactly she means, to which Drago replies, everyone knows who she is, but no one has ever seen her, and smiling, continues to look at Mal, who is already almost leaving this place. Drago continues to speak about her, but the young man barely hears her last words. Suddenly sparks flare in the air, the light cuts and blinds his eyes, and at that moment, everything around seems to detach from reality. Now, as Drago says, she is the protector of the human race, and she is a true goddess. After some time, Mal Lilith returns to the real world and then, gathering his strength, pulls the hero's sword from the stone. Marion and Kaido were astonished to the point of madness, because in a moment they simply froze in place from what they saw, and in the bushes Sylphie, Lisa, and Clara were just as mesmerized, watching what was happening. Suddenly people began to gather in the square. They came there immediately as soon as they heard the loud rumble, and no one understood what was happening, so the crowd just waited confusedly for explanations after each new echo. As soon as Mel Lilith pulled the sword from the stone, his consciousness was drawn into a haze, and in his imaginary hands, he saw the hero's sword Drago, while his own body still swayed as if it had not fully returned to reality. Suddenly Maulela felt an unbearable pain tearing his head, and he sat on a stone. He could no longer stand on his feet. His body trembled uncontrollably, but the sword stubbornly remained in his hands, and the young warrior awkwardly tried to pull himself together. The young man remembers the words of Drago. He said that the speed of the young man's thinking had only increased, and ordered not to relax even after he had drawn the sword. Mel finally understood what Drago with an R meant when he said those words, and from that the young man felt unbearable pain, but at the same time he looked fearfully at Marion, who stood nearby, amazed at what had happened. Marion suddenly pulled herself together, and again was filled with rage. Mal Lilith firmly decided that right now he must stop her. In the next moment the girl suddenly rushed forward and seized the initiative, sharply pointed the sword at the young man, and he immediately prepared to defend himself, tensely withdrawing his position. The boy crouched, then suddenly sprang upward. Marion did not manage to catch this maneuver and stopped abruptly, losing her rhythm. Suddenly Mal Lilith appeared right before the girl's hands, moving at such a speed that guessing his next move was almost impossible. The young man was extremely surprised. He suddenly became incredibly fast. He did not use any skills, and now moved even faster than during mountain deer stride. So the youth sincerely believes that the difference between S rank and A rank is really that big. At this time, Marion is having an extremely hard time fighting Mal. She continuously tries to dodge, but the young man repeatedly overwhelms her with attacks. The young man activated the special effect of the hero's sword, and his striking actions gained a completely different power. From this, the divine protection of the Fairy King's skill immediately activates, enveloping the fighter with an invisible barrier support. Marion does not understand what exactly is happening around her. The girl repeatedly launches attacks, but the boy does not take any damage. The divine protection of the Fairy King lasts exactly 15 seconds, so he does not feel any pain at all, and his true hero's sword triumphs. The boy tightly grips the sword, sharply shouts Marion's name, and presses her to himself, hugging her tightly, then takes the girl by the face and asks her to come to her senses. He does not let go of the heroine and continues to hug her tightly, trying to regain control over reality. Finally, the young man kisses the girl, and her sword whistles as it falls from her hand to the ground. Marion's eyes flash with shock, and she throws the sword. The strike seems to pierce through the whole crowd like an electric shock, while Sylphie only shakes with rage, and Lizzie stands stunned, not understanding what happened. Mel Lillet almost breaks down and sharply flies away. Lisa fusses near her in fear, and Marion and Mel Lillet move away from each other, as if a chasm has just flared up between them. The girl slowly regains consciousness, breathing heavily, and for a moment looks around in confusion, as if only now realizing where she has ended up. The young man blushes awkwardly, swallows the reproach in his voice, and stepping back a step, asks her for forgiveness. The girl suddenly loses her balance. Her legs buckle, her body sways forward, preparing to fall under the weight of sudden weakness. Mal Lila feels as if she has finally come to her senses, looks around confusedly, and sees Mel and Lelouda in front of her, the young man who is also embarrassedly trying to catch his breath. Suddenly, Mal Lillet activates the ability Spirit Veil and begins to slowly hover in the air, as if invisible ropes have lifted him. He sees Marion. The girl stands half confused and looks at the young man in bewilderment, not yet recovered, and not understanding what exactly is happening. While Lelouda was flying upwards, he looked down and noticed a crowd of people who had frozen and were watching the events, not hiding their surprise. People stood watching as the young man held the hero's sword in his hands, and he mentally feared, there are really too many people here. Then he sharply flies into the bushes, spreads his arms, and calls Clara to come over, and she jumps out of the branches and swiftly flies straight to him. The girl hugs the young man and presses her side against him, curling up next to him as if seeking protection in him. Clara trembles and says fearfully that she was very scared and that she was about to be killed, and the young man smiles at her in response and confidently says that now everything will be fine with them. The girl reaches out her hand to the boy, sticks out her tongue, and makes a funny gesture while he asks in surprise why she suddenly started licking him. Clara awkwardly explains that when she is scared, she does this to calm down, and the air around seems to thicken from her tension. The girl adds that she does this also when she is happy, and Lisa and Sylphie watch from the side. Sylphie even clenches from embarrassment, and Lizzie looks at this with disgust, averting her gaze. Mal Lillet speaks quietly and stubbornly that he has something to talk about, and asks Lisa to move away from other eyes and ears to stay alone and say the main thing. Lisa hesitates only for a moment, then nods and approaches closer, holding Sylphie behind, while Mal holds Clara, controlling the situation. Marion remains sitting on the ground, watching in surprise as Mal Lillet and others swiftly take off and disappear into the sky, and her face flushes red. She spreads her arms to the sides, the sword lies nearby, her mouth slightly open, and her heart beats so loudly that it seems even others can hear it. She thinks that the first kiss was an accident, remembers the surprised look both Mel's and Lelouda's, and also how the second time he already managed to save her, so inside her appears the thought that it could not have been just a coincidence. The second time he more cautiously but boldly grabs her cheeks and pulls her to himself, forcing her to close her eyes. She touches his lips and whispers his name Mel, and he still, as if not believing what is happening, looks upward, while her heart beats loudly and fast. Gosov rushed to her, eyes full of fear and horror, sweat streaming down his face, and he asked tremblingly if she was okay. Hojev abruptly stopped, opened his mouth, raised his eyebrows, and awkwardly admitted his disrespect, immediately apologized for the rudeness, stammering, and asked if she was not injured. Mariana lowered her gaze, said depressedly and sadly that she caused so many problems for everyone because she understood that she had done something unbearably terrible. She came to her senses, stood up, and asked the man if there were any victims, and Gasev replied that only one bounty hunter was wounded. Mariana pressed the words firmly and directly, stating that this bounty hunter was the instigator of all the chaos, so Gasev must take him and interrogate him, to which the man silently accepted the order and set off to carry it out. Marian takes a deep breath and slowly exhales, as if a weight has finally lifted from her chest. She thinks that fortunately everything turned out well. No one was killed or injured, although in the worst case she herself could have died, and for the first time after this she enters a berserk state of proud thought that she can keep herself under control, so even her face looks incredibly sad. Marian blushes again, touches her lips, lowers her gaze, and involuntarily thinks that he stopped her. Utgosov says that a boy named Mel Layla made an unprecedentedly brazen act, and the girl waves it off, saying there is no point in talking about such trifles, only her suppressed FFF can be heard. She awkwardly twitches, blushes even more, and stubbornly insists that it is nothing, just a few kisses. The girl clasps her hands on her chest and nervously fidgets from shame, while Gozov explains that he actually meant the hero's sword, so she shyly looks away and awkwardly tries to understand his words. She almost screams from shame. Goziev says that the hero's sword is a national relic, and when it was lost, the country suffered terrible damage, so they are standing in front of a huge stone in which the sword Mer used to be. Mariana claims that the boy was recognized as the sword ghost, so he was able to pull it out, but the girl objects. Everyone had the right to do it, so no one can blame the boy. Gosov replies that technically she is right, but that does not mean one can just take the sword from a public place. One must go through the designated procedures, and this is clearly indicated on the tombstone, and Marian asks if all this is the same as with choosing the design. She thinks the plaque says if they can, then let them take it. Some soldiers come and take the samurai away, and he is still outraged because he demands not to be gentle. He already warned that his hand is broken. Marian steps forward and declares that she will take responsibility, since it was because of her that the city was threatened, and the girl trembles, ready to endure the consequences. The girl sadly realizes she has done something truly terrible. Joseph excitedly asks if the girl is sure about every word, and she smiles and replies that she does not need any concessions. Marian smiles kindly in response. The carriage is already moving and heading further down the road, soon approaching the next stop. Lisa sits discontentedly, with a gloomy expression looking straight at the floor, as if she does not want to listen to anything. Clara happily says that they are approaching the inn. Med encourages stopping there and talking in a calm atmosphere. Lisa watches as Sulfinast Felania holds his hand, and nervously wonders if this makes them too close to Lady Sulfina, while Mal Laylit notices that creepy look and cannot understand what exactly is troubling her. In front of them, a covered table is spread, and someone impatiently asks again, as if checking, "Is everything clear?" Clara's stomach rumbles, and she admits to Mal that she is starving, which finally ruins the mood. The girl clenches her teeth, bends over, and grabs her stomach, and Mal Lilith promises the girls that they will go and eat. In the background, Lisa quietly talks with a soldier, and Malalat impatiently asks her if they can have lunch first before continuing with their affairs. Suddenly, the girl stops and asks the young man if he knows her. She becomes curious where he even knows her name from, and without looking away, she says, "How do you know who I am?" She says she has not introduced herself yet, and looks at the boy with obvious disapproval. Mel Laylat awkwardly smiles and promises to tell about it a little later, and the girl sighs indignantly before they both sit down. As soon as they sit down to eat, plates with meat and fresh vegetables are already on the table, and everything looks as if it was prepared especially for them. Lilith explains that they cannot afford to spend too much, but today she is obedient and therefore they arrange a real feast. Clara is happy about this, as if the celebration has already begun. Next to her sits Leza with the same dissatisfied expression on her face, as if the situation does not suit her for a moment. While Fina Esfelania says that it looks delicious, she hardly listens to anyone. Food distracts her. Mal Lilith does not understand why everyone is looking at him, awkwardly smiles, and drops of sweat run down his face, and he gives an awkward answer that he is just embarrassed by such attention. She tells Lisa to eat too and not be shy, but the girl stubbornly refuses, and with a trembling voice assures that she can control herself. The girl continues to look at the young man with contempt, and he awkwardly chuckles as if he does not understand why he is so disliked. Then Sulfina Estfalania gently smiles. Eating together is more fun, and the food then seems tastier, so Lisa. Where Lisa begins to glow and blush with shame, and the girl says, if Lady Sylphina Estfalania says so, then she agrees, and Mel Laylit understands only the consequence, but not the reason, because she does not remember any of her own bad deeds. after which she disappears as if this repeats again and again until only emptiness remains. After some time, everyone sits down to eat together, when suddenly the young man notices something strange and sees Liza begin to glow. You see how Sulfina Estphalania eats extremely appetizingly, but at that very moment Liza bursts into tears, and the girl suddenly completely softens, as if all her firmness disappears. Mara carefully asks Liza if she is okay and what exactly happened, and she, sobbing with excitement, says that she is incredibly happy. Lady Sulfina Estwalinia has returned, so the girl begins to cry and tremble. Lady Sulfina Estwalinia seems like an angel to Liza, and for her the whole world now depends on this return. Although my Layla and Lady Sulfina look at Liza attentively, almost with surprise, the girl still cannot hold back tears. Pearl bitterly admits that during her apprenticeship she had poor control over magic, because of which those around her mocked her. But despite this, Mrs. Sulfina Estphalania turned to the mother goddess for advice for such a worthless apprentice as she was. Later, Liza did join the guard and was able to overcome many difficulties, and only thanks to Lady Sulfina, and now she again cannot stop crying upon learning what happened next. Liza learns that Mrs. Sulfina Estphalania has disappeared. She is torn apart by madness, tears and trembling turn into an uncontrollable state, as if she is about to lose herself. The girl, wiping tears with trembling hands, says that she is incredibly happy. Finally, her mistress has been found, and Sulfina Estphalania and Mal Laylat smile, on whose cheeks a faint blush barely appears on Sulfina's face. Lisa looks away, apologizes, decides to introduce herself, bows, and asks to be called simply Lisa, although she says she is worth the kingdom of Philians. Mila Layla also bows, says she is pleased to meet, then points to Clara and introduces her, but immediately gets upset at how Clara poses in front of her. Ifina Estphalinia also introduced herself, shortening her name and saying she is simply Sylphie, but was told that is too informal, and then she objected that she remembers nothing of her past and is not used to being made a princess. The girl smiles and explains that is exactly why she wants Lisa to be her friend, and asks if she minds, to which she agrees. Lisa shouts, "How can I be against it?" And Sylphie Estphalinia replies, "Then it's decided," extends her hand and solemnly declares that now they are friends. Lisa says stunned that she understands everything and shakes her hand, but at that moment she herself becomes awkward. Then Mal Lelate also introduces himself, winks and extends his hand, but Lisa gloomily turns away from him and grumbles that she will restrain herself and not shake it. Sophie, Clara, and Lisa bathe together, and Clara happily splashes water on herself, waving her palms as if it were a celebration. Lisa wipes Sylphie's back and shouts that it is too cramped here, asks Clara to wait her turn, but still happily rushes straight to them, and Lisa together with Sylphie sharply closes the door. Lisa and Sylphie freeze in amazement and look at Clara, their mouths are agape, as if they cannot believe what happened. Lisa angrily looks away and compares her too skinny body with Clara's body, then sharply tells Sylphie that size is not the most important thing, and Sylphie looks at her in surprise. Clara replies that large forms are rather a hindrance, and she envies both of them, and Lisa and Sylphie ask if that was a mockery from the girl. Tara, blinking in surprise, asks what these large forms are and why they are needed at all, and Sylphie also does not understand and shifts her gaze to what Lisa should answer, causing her to blush deeply. Lisa says that giving birth to a child from a loved one is probably true, and Clara admits that she understands, but Lisa adds that she is not sure because she herself is uncertain. Sarah, without thinking for a second, declares that she will use everything to be close to her brother, and Lisa and Sylphie look at her in shock. Then Sarah resolutely adds that she will go to the end. He says that he will try the same for Liza and for Sylphie. Lisa smiles crookedly and nods. That's how it turns out, and Sylphie trembles, tries to say something, but finally shouts that having a child means getting married. She bursts out shouting, "You cannot marry Mel," and Leluda Clara replies, "All right," agreeing that she will just be a family member, while Sylphie states, "If you don't marry, then there will be no child." In surprise, she asks if it is really possible to give birth without marriage, but she becomes ashamed and no longer knows how to say it normally. While they argue, Laylat approaches the window, peeks inside, and listens to their conversation through the closed door. Not understanding at all what exactly is being discussed, his cheeks burn from this, and he looks as if waiting for some answer, while the young man calmly continues to look outside through the glass. He scans the room with his gaze and stops at the sword. He remembers that conversation about the evil dragon as if it was somewhere else in the past, and from the memory his heart tightens even more, and his face becomes very sad as he slowly leans forward. Leaning on the windowsill, he says that the dragon has already come into this world, so maybe he can find out the truth about it if he learns to read the surrounding world itself. He opens his eyes wide, focuses and sees Lisa telling the girls that they first need to grow up a little, and Clara shudders, feeling sad because she really wants to know more. The three girls are frightened by Mel's appearance. He stands with his mouth open, blood flows from his nose, and dark fatigue appears under his eyes, and the girls immediately say that Mel has started a nosebleed. Lisa wonders if he changed after their conversation, which caused the bleeding, but Mal Laylat notices this and shouts that something is wrong with him, although in reality he just heard them. Sulfina Estfalania runs up to Mal Laylat and asks if he is okay, and he only wipes the blood from his nose and assures that everything is fine. Mal Laylat admits that he has long wanted to read about the evil dragon sealed somewhere in this world, but each time he feels it takes too much strength, and Lisa wonders how one can even dare to read about a dragon. Lisa talks about the skill of evaluation and even X rank and admits that she hears about such a rank for the first time, and Mal Laylat replies. Once he thought that if he reads the world, he might learn something about the dragon, so Lisa looks at him suspiciously, and he repeats the same words again. Mal Laylat says that it turns out that getting this information is not so simple. His body suddenly gives out, and Lisa immediately understands that's why he started having a nosebleed. Mal Laylat warns, if nothing is done, the dragon will appear again in 16 years, and Lisa, freezing in thought, says that it seems they have enough time, but it's better to do nothing and someone might intervene and accelerate its return, even to the point that it comes tomorrow. Mal Laylat answers that all he knows is, if he becomes stronger and trains his body, then maybe he can level up the evaluation skill, and Lisa advises just to train. Laylat grimaced as if he was uncomfortable starting training, and Lisa, looking at his face, said gloomily that his expression shows he is reluctant to train, and that he already feels how hard it will be for him, so she clarified whether he is a hero only because he pulled out the hero's sword, to which he replied, "That's right," and then she asked him to name his stats and he stopped to look. He saw his stats on the screen indicators and immediately felt a wave. The numbers had increased. He feverishly tried to compare them with what was before, and realized that the changes were real, they really had increased. Previously, these indicators looked negative, but now many had shifted to positive values, as if the system recognized his progress. He became terribly confused about how such stats could be raised at all. Doesn't he need to train at least a year to move his E-level to D-level? And this thought overwhelmed him with heavy, sticky uncertainty. Suddenly, the words of Ardrago flashed in his memory. If he can do this, it means he is strong, so Laylat caught himself on this thought and allowed it to push him forward. Leluda sighs and says that there was too much information about the evaluation skill, so he didn't finish reading it. Now he begins to explain something, and the girls listen intently while he continues reading. He raises his eyes and reads the rule. Any achievements physical, spiritual, or magical obtained through theft enhance stats, so while he steals, he gains experience. Even if he and the hero he reads about fight equally, their experience differs due to different ranks D and S, and this makes his head spin from understanding. He hurries on and realizes that very soon he will be able to become stronger. Knowledge, skills, and experience accumulated by the object are added and added just like everything before, because stolen skills do not replace the old ones, but layer on top, raising his wealth higher than his own had been. He announces to everyone that if he becomes as strong as the hero and reads his story to the end, he will gain the power of two heroes, and in the clash with the dragon inside him, the might will double. When there are two heroes, the situation changes sharply, and at this moment he intends to show what he is preparing to show you. Nearby, in the silence of the estate, a long-haired girl knocks on the door and asks to be allowed to speak, but from inside they rudely order her to leave, calling her a walking infection. The girl screams wildly, tearing the silence and demanding an explanation, what she did to be treated this way, and the man behind the door harshly growls in response, "Shut up." The woman, clenching her fist, solemnly promises to curse her, as if words weighed more than a sword. The girl finds herself in a dungeon. The cold dampness of the stone walls constricts her breath, the lantern flickers, and ahead stretches the dark corridor of the prison. Since childhood, Marian Verdemian stood out among others, and from the age of 7 she aspired to become a knight, but there was no one who would mock her dream. Everyone placed great hopes on her, and she blushed even before the blessing ceremony, because it turned out she had a very rare and at the same time precise talent. The only unique skill berserk, which raged within him like the power of the final blow. It was decided that his ability could be extremely useful in battle. She was called the 8th wonder of the world. She was given berserk before she even turned 15, and she was the favorite of the gods, but the happiness did not last long. The warrior lies on the ground with several wounds, and the girl nearby holds her breath, feeling how fear tightens her chest. All these clashes against the tiger, from whom there was neither mercy nor respite. She or he, in the frame, decisively pierces the tiger with her sword, putting all her berserk into the strike. The heroine is extremely excited. Her husband looks stunned at the terrible abilities he cannot look away from. The girl finishes off the beast up close, mercilessly bringing the duel to an end. She drops to her knees in a puddle of blood, breathing heavily, as if just escaped from nightmares themselves. No one expected the berserker state to change a person so much beyond recognition, broken and inevitable. It happened when she was only 9 years old, despite not yet knowing why her own power took away control. Despite the successful outcome of the battle, they decided that this magical creature might be more dangerous than herself, so they put her under house arrest for 6 years. He claims that thanks to the heavenly eyes, she seemingly gained freedom, as if inheriting the will of a hero, but eventually fell back into the berserker state and endangered those around her. Behind bars, she looks away and says, "This is why she is here." She admits that she is afraid of cats and lost control because the memory of the saber-toothed tiger she defeated when she was 9 flared up, so she has no excuses. He adds that this girl is honest too. Pei and Du tells her that she is honest too, then suggests, maybe she is just trying to calm herself. She knows it, but she cannot dismiss the thought that everything happened because of how she behaved at that moment. Because of her small mistake, someone could have been hurt. Kaito agrees with her and says that he was wounded, and she, stopping, quietly asks if it was not his fault, as if demanding an answer to the end. Kato smiles and Marion admits that in the end, the same man whom he struck with his own hand broke his arm, and Kato immediately understands. He has been exposed, so he only says so. Kaito confidently says that he only needed to catch the cruel killer of the Holy Father, and Marion responds negatively. There are witnesses who claim that he appeared after overhearing their conversation, hiding in the shadows, so Kaito sharply assures it is a misunderstanding. In the heavy silence, Kaito begins to talk about that man and tensely tries to recall his name, swallowing words one after another. His gaze darts sharply, and he begins to blush, as if his own memories suddenly became shameful to him. Kaito nods enthusiastically and says that Kaito is incredible. Imagine he pulled out the hero's sword, and Marion picks up yes, that's true, but raising her eyes, she begins to explain something, then stammers and hangs in a long, awkward silence. Kaito claims that he pulled the sword out by right, and asks if Marion is offended, clarifying. Could it be that she was not the one to pull it out, since she inherited the hero's will, and she only vaguely looks around and wanders aside, avoiding his gaze? If she is offended, the girls immediately become cautiously quiet and avert their eyes, feeling that they will speak carefully further. She says that perhaps inheriting heroes means taking on an unbearable burden. She lowers her eyes and quietly adds, it is a burden that she placed on him, so she would have pulled it out first already. She drew the sword before he could realize what was happening. He looks at her in surprise, as if he just saw a completely different determination in her. She smiles and says, who is she fooling? Probably, she wasn't given the ability to draw that sword, and Kaito asks her. They ask him what he will do next, and the room seems to freeze in anticipation of the answer. She explains that she was accepted into the Knight Squad only on the condition that she never enter a berserker state again. So, of course, she will be expelled, and she is ready for the punishment. She admits that she couldn't become a hero, so most likely she will be put under house arrest again, and with tension adds, so what will you do then? She understands why everything will turn out that way, but still wants to ask him in a half-whisper, without looking away. He asks if she wants to rejoin the Knights, and she stubbornly says no, asking to be allowed to find him and entrust her with the duty to return the hero. When the hero's sword gleams, she realizes, this is the country's treasure, and the hero's own power is needed by the state. Kaito coldly and arrogantly says that she is too serious and that he doesn't like people like her. She sarcastically asks if he will ask her for forgiveness, but Kaito sharply replies that he doesn't like that saying forgiveness has nothing to do with it, and the question is different. Saito dismisses her words, saying that this is not enough, so she needs to reveal her true passion. He presses with his gaze and impatiently demands that she finally say what truly burns in her heart. She explains, I want to find him because that is the hero's mission, and without looking away, sets out on her path with a firm intention to fulfill this task. The hero's sword and he himself are really so interested in her. She remembers all the moments with Mio, as if they were etched into memory forever. Carl shakes her hand and shouts, closing his eyes, and she begins, I will tell you the truth. She calmly says that she fell in love with him, and these words sound quieter than his scream, but more stubborn than any doubts. She calmly walks through the forest, listens to strange sounds, and when he asks Clara what she is doing, she points to the ground and explains that she is digging and uncovering something important. Mel explains that she just went to the toilet, and therefore, supposedly, throws sand to maintain decency. She apologizes for possibly seeming rude and asks, "Now let her be listened to less shyly." Clara suddenly starts making sounds as if she is about to vomit, and Mel immediately becomes alert. He feels that something unpredictable is about to happen. Finally, Clara makes the last sound, and he asks if it was really vomiting and worries if she is okay. Tara assures him not to worry. Vomiting is also part of the cat's necessary duties, so nothing terrible. Mel quiets his breath and, confused, asks himself if Clara could be not a tiger but a cat. Clara sharply shouts for everyone to say out loud whether she is a human or a tiger. She raises her hands and shouts that she is half tiger, and therefore she is human. Mel again hears the same strange sounds in a row and is horrified. Could she still be vomiting? Because cats, as he recalls, often vomit. Then it seems to him that Clara is more like a cat than a human, isn't she? When everyone sits at the table and enjoys a delicious dish, he asks what will happen next, and Sylphie looks at him with surprise. Malalit asks for a minute while she chooses tasty bread because she needs to buy things. All her belongings remained in the city where the hero died, and she says that his plans are much more global than just stopping by the store. Lilat asks if she will not go to the land of the elves, since she was entrusted to bring Sylphina Estphalinia home, and Lisa replies that Sylphina Estphalinia has lost her memories. Lisa insists that, for Sylphina Estphalinia to remember, first it must be restored. Malalit clarifies whether it would be better to do this after returning to the land of the elves, hinting that probably that is the case, and Lisa asks Sylphie if she has ever heard a divine voice, to which Sylphie asks to explain what that means. Lisa sighs with a sad expression and says that she thought so, after which she confidently addresses Sylphie. As the priestess of light, she has lost her powers, and Lisa adds that only she can receive divine revelations only once. As soon as Lisa received the divine revelation, she secretly prepares and sets out to find the hero destined to inherit the will, taking with her only minimal safety, and Mal Lilith asks if this was hidden. Lisa replies that there was no publicity, because if everyone found out, the world would plunge into chaos, and they would not be able to find the hero. Lilat, understanding this, decides to act the same way, secretly sets off on the road, but soon a great thief Hegel Ois attacks her, so she stops and sharply asks what he wants from her. Hegel Ois questions her in response whether she knows why Sylphina Estphalinia lost her memories, and the thief claims that it seems she drank a strange tincture. Against the background of her mentioned status, it is said that this is the curse of forgetfulness. Lilat plunges into thought and voices the conclusion. To expel the curse placed on the mind, they definitely need a strong wizard, otherwise the memories cannot be returned. While Illit asks to wait a bit, he is going to read the world and find a wizard capable of this, and just then a sharp gust of wind rises. Lisa is nervous and checks everything with her gaze, whether her nose will bleed again, or if it is okay, and Clara calmly continues eating as if nothing happened. Layla says that in a few days' journey from here, there will be a town where they will find a wizard suitable for them, but she is a very old woman, and Lisa immediately replies that they will manage. The main thing is that she can help. Lisa solemnly and sincerely thanks God in every sense, feeling relief even despite the unknown. While Illit suggests taking the cart and going there, Lisa insists that she wants to stop at one place first, and they stand still, listening to the silence and their own decisions. Mel Lilith stood outside and waited while Lisa was talking to someone, then overheard their conversation. Lisa said that Sylphina Estphalinia had lost her memories, but would definitely regain them. Then she heard that Sylphina had found the hero, and some girl nearby enthusiastically called him handsome, so she herself dreamed of traveling with the hero. They also asked to pass the information to the country. While Lisa was irritably pondering what she heard, Laylat was smugly smiling and thinking he was a genius, although he only realized this after using the appraisal skill, because it was about Sylphina Estphalinia. Supposedly, they found the heir of the hero's will to report everything after returning to the country, and he stubbornly continued to delight in his own greatness. As a result, they went by cart, approached some village, and saw something strange. The storm was already breaking from the sky, but no people were visible anywhere, so they began to ask if anyone was in the houses. If someone asks if there are people present, Mel Lilith would answer that she sees shadows of people, so someone is inside. But Sylphina Estphalinia will be surprised why no one reacts to their arrival, while the wind howls dully between the buildings. When the wind rises, Mal Laylat immediately understands. These are ruins, and the entire city district has fallen into decay, and some man walks in the dust, cautiously peering from door to door. In shock, she freezes and cannot move for a long time, as if the air was suddenly taken from her chest, leaving only anxiety and a sense of doom. Lisa fusses about everywhere, knocks on doors, begs to open, hurries on and asks someone to hear her, but her words get lost in deaf refusals and silent corridors. Lisa explains that something terrible is happening in the house. Voices come from there, and boys rudely drive a girl away, contemptuously calling her a walking plague. And the girl desperately screams that her grandmother is not guilty of anything, and the city did not become like this because of her, and she herself is not the plague. This girl in the February protest raises her voice and insists that the ruler is to blame, and from the house she is sharply answered. The voice thunders an order not to shift the blame onto someone else. The girl begins to tremble and decides to curse the one who says this. Now Lilith sees. Her name is Ninali Zeta, and she is the granddaughter of a witch. A voice from the house asks what she can do, and she replies, calling the interlocutor clumsy. Ninali shudders all over, and the curse painfully responds already on her. Very embarrassed, Ninali says that she is not clumsy at all, because the curse bounces back to the one who utters it. She goes to seek happiness in another house, but as soon as she sees Mel, fear immediately overwhelms her, and she stops and asks who he is, clutching his sleeve with trembling fingers. She pulls her fingers again, threatens with a curse, and finally asks who they are. Little Leela immediately understands how problematic their intention and their very man are. She quietly suggests to her to listen to them first, forcing herself to take a step forward and restrain her fear. With trembling hands, she pours them tea, invites them to help themselves, and then retreats to a corner, pressing against the wall and hiding her gaze from everyone. She is still trembling and asks what they want. Little Lilith says they came to ask her grandmother to lift the curse. She thinks about how to lift the curse and explains that her grandmother is not here now, so she asks when she will return, and in response only bursts out, "Maybe she will never come." Then she cries and tells that, according to rumors, her grandmother cast a curse of decline on the city, but she considers these accusations unfounded, sadly clutching her fingers on the edge of the table. She trembles and says that officials just came and threw her grandmother into prison, as if she will never return, and everyone blames the decline on the ruler's failed policy, and they put all the blame on the grandmother. She continues to sob, and Lisa quietly replies that this happens often. The world is full of rulers who blame their mistakes on evil spirits or unknown forces so as not to take the blame themselves. She admits with regret that she is still ashamed of how they were caught then, and hopefully asks how now to lift the curse from Sylphie. Clara looks at them with a pitiful expression, then shifts her gaze to Nanali, who is still crying, and confidently orders her team. They must save that grandmother. When Sainali stops crying and lifts her head, Sylphina Estfalania says that she also hates it when innocent people are accused without reason. Everyone asks Mel for his opinion, and he immediately knows. Their actions will inevitably bring trouble to many, so he has a dreadful premonition. She agrees and says that they must save her grandmother, and then Mel promises to do everything possible so that everyone will be happy. In the evening they stand on the rocks, and calling upon the spirits of the wind, together they rise into the sky flying as a group, like broken by the wind, but unstoppable. They cannot be scared and scream that it is too high, then land right near the ruler's house directly on the balcony, where the guards do not notice them, and they enter inside. We enter and step by step move through the corridor, looking around while being closely watched. Mal Laylat notices a soldier who thinks she wants to sleep, so he pays no attention, then suddenly grabs her by the elbow, orders her to wait, presses her against the wall, and covers her mouth with his palm, causing her to twitch and freeze in tension. He begins to blush and groan, trying to muffle the sound by clenching it in her hand, and Mal Laylat sees. The soldier has already turned away. He takes her hand and presses it to the girl's lips to keep her silent. He removes the girl's hand from her mouth, apologizes, and swears it was an accidental incident, then again tries to listen to her thoughts. She will feel that he is indecent, and she will not know where to go. They walk to the door next to the corridor, not taking their eyes off each other. We go down the stairs and exit to the door where a guard stands all alone, without reinforcement. Mal Lilat wonders if Granny is really kept right here. With relief, he thinks. The guard is only one, and then he notices. The guard is already nodding off to sleep himself, and Mal Laylath considers whether to strike him right in the forehead. He draws his sword and decides to check the status of the hero Drago, locked in the blade. Something happens instantly right in front of the guard. He doesn't even have time to realize what happened before Mal Lila sneaks up behind him. Mal Lilith strikes him with her elbow in the neck, and he falls unconscious, then quickly finds a key on him, arranges everything as if the man just fell asleep, and confidently opens the door, knowing that this is his place. Ninali sees her grandmother standing behind the prison wall, recognizes her, and asks why she is here. to which the grandmother reproaches. Hasn't Ninali heard the order to leave this city? And the phrase breaks off as if the wall swallows the rest of the words. As soon as Mal Lilith opens the dungeon, Ninali rushes to her grandmother, hugs her tightly and sobs, while Clara, Sylphina Estfilinia, and Mal Lilith stand near Puroa and watch the scene attentively, and Granny curiously asks who they are. Mal Lilith, breathing calmly, introduces himself and explains that they came to ask her to lift the curse of oblivion because they came to save, and the grandmother immediately asks, if they really save her, won't the criminals be imprisoned too? Sainali tugs her grandmother's hand and exclaims that she is not a criminal, but the grandmother sharply stops her and asks to be quieter, then glances at Sylphin Estfilania and confidently states that this little elf is cursed, then looks at him arrogantly and says she understands now. The grandmother hugs Ninali tightly and whispers that if the girls pull her out of here, she will lift the curse from Ninali in exchange for salvation. The girls thank her joyfully, but only Mel Layloth behaves strangely restrained and suspiciously silent. Someone urges to leave quickly, but Mel Layloth stops them and asks if he can ask a few questions. Everyone looks at him in shock, and the grandmother patiently moves closer, waiting exactly for these questions. Then Lilat directly asks why the grandmother came to cast a curse on this city, and why she had to do it right now. While Fina Estfilania does not take her eyes off Mal in sincere surprise, Zeta has already finally cursed this city, and the ruler, without realizing it, is the one who blames her for everything. She wanted to be impressed, not even realizing that with her words she had already cursed the city, and asked if he said everything, and Ninali sobbed again and shouted that Grandma did nothing. Grandma covered her mouth again and whispered angrily that she asked for silence, while Mal Lillet just watched and thought she had strength plenty of it. Mal Lillet pulls herself together and asks him how exactly he will prove his words. She understands that Grandma will deny everything, and tries to present the events as if the city's decline happened because of the ruler's actions and the deeds of its inhabitants. She needs that at the moment she is condemned, she can say that the accusations fell on an innocent person, and therefore she will curse everyone who dared to do so. Lilat sadly lowers her gaze, as if a heavy shadow has fallen on her shoulders. Grandma Zeta asks with embarrassment what is happening and why she is silent, spreads her hands and says she did nothing, and her granddaughter supports her, but the trouble is that even if she is saved, she will deliberately get captured again, so the problem must be solved now. If she does not admit guilt, next time Ninali will be under suspicion, and he made this decision because he sees Ninali has a unique talent, and that means a high-level curse. If she does not admit guilt, next time Ninali will be under suspicion, and he made this decision because he sees Ninali has a unique talent, and that means a high-level curse. Lilat notices that Grandma's skill is lower than her granddaughter's, and it is not surprising if people think that she is the one who brought the curse on the city. Hanma starts laughing and says that everyone in the whole town knows Ninali is incapable of magic, so such accusations are simply absurd. When Ali smiled sadly, Mal Layla involuntarily recalled, someone once confidently told her that she was clumsy, but the curse bounces back on the one who cast it, so she never did it again. At every appropriate moment, Zeta reminded Ninali how dangerous it is to cast spells and curse people both within the city and far beyond its walls, and repeated this to her granddaughter again and again. So the words witchcraft and curse sowed fear in the girl, and she could not cast any spell, and none of the town's inhabitants even suspected her. Now Lilat asks Zeta exactly what she wanted to find out, and Lilat made sure that Nanoli did not use magic, although she really had a talent for it. Grandma will guess and ask questions, so it turns out that he is a real expert, and how easy it is to say so without knowing anything about magic, and Lilith already thinks that she should not become a witch, although there is something in it that does not let her calm down. She assured everyone that she did not curse, she only removed curses, but she was constantly asked to curse someone, and each such request made the silence increasingly heavy. After Rianali's parents died in an accident, she decided to live in this place and take care of her grandmother, because the city itself had rotted to the bone, and everyone stubbornly insisted that she was not a witch, but a curser, until even the ruler came to her with a request. Then Lilat asks why Rianali cursed the city, and she hoarsely replies that she did nothing of the sort, so he frowns and skeptically fires. If you hate this city so much, then why do you continue to live here? When the grandmother does not answer, Mal Lila explains the thing is that Rianali could not leave. Ninali said she did not want to leave the city where her parents were buried, and now Ninali looks at the grandmother with an uncertain question, and she looks away. Now Lilat states that this is exactly why Rianali needed the city's decline. If no one can live in it anymore, then Ninali will agree to move, succumbing to the logic of hopelessness. Rianali asks her grandmother directly, and she looks at her granddaughter with bitterness, saying that Mal Leela has a high evaluation rank and understood everything correctly, so the grandmother silently admits that her plan was revealed. The grandmother tightly holds her granddaughter's hand, sobs, and with a trembling voice says that she never wanted the child to end up in this city. She confesses that she wished her a quiet and peaceful life in another city, and then, as if the brakes failed, she broke her own vow not to curse anyone, so in the end, she only ruined everything. Nay Nali assures her that it is not her fault, and the grandmother, trembling, thanks her and admits she herself cursed the city, so now the curse will fall upon her. Connolly cries even harder and declares that she was wrong. The city is not cursed because she removed the curse from it. The grandmother looks around at her in surprise, and Mel Laylat asks Zet if it is possible to secretly place a curse on the city and just as secretly remove it, to which Zet replies that it is possible. Nainali says that she secretly removed the curse from the grandmother but warns, if the grandmother found out that the curse was already removed, she would cause trouble again, and Nainali herself freezes in surprise and tries to explain something. Nainali says that she was scared, but she knew the way out because she had been secretly watching the grandmother all along and where her path led. She seemed not to look away when grandmother was removing the curse, although her heart was tightening with fear, and I saw how her eyes held tightly to every movement. Watch the actions of the witch whom I so greatly respected. She said she was able to lift the curse. Ninali asks grandmother to forgive her for silence about this, because she loves her grandmother and wants her to always be near even when she is afraid to speak. When he also begins to cry, Mal Lilith assures that Ninali lifted the curse from the city before it had time to take effect, so no one was harmed. He is stopped with a question about why the city fell into decline, and he answers that the ruler is to blame, after which he thoughtfully reflects. Although there is something else here, he still decides to read the city anew and recreate in his mind the connections leading to the ruler, on whom he needs to focus. Everyone silently waits until Mel Lilith finally clears up, and he calls someone a scoundrel, as if having finally exposed him. The ruler planned to remove his competitors from the way and get rich by casting a curse, so he ordered a young couple to bring a famous witch, but received a stubborn refusal. In anger, he lured them into a trap and killed them so that it looked like death from an accident. The sorceress explained that she could not cast the curse because she mistakenly thought she had lost her powers, so the ruler left her alone, and since he had nothing to curse his rivals with, he began to exterminate them one by one, claiming it was just coincidence. Eventually, he achieved the highest position in these lands, but after a few years, the ruler's throne became so shaky that he decided to shift all the blame for his own mistakes onto the witch, declaring that the cause of all misfortunes was the curse of the old woman. Lilac glances, burns with a flash of gaze, then sharply turns and says he is leaving because he is always dragged along and questioned where he was going, and he answers, he will go teach the scoundrel a lesson. Now Lilette freely passes through the building, and the guards stay behind and shout for him to stop, then inform others that he is moving in one direction, and they decide to surround him. Sulfina Estphalinia worries whether he will be all right, and Lisa and Ninali nearby are equally anxious. When he asks if he really intends to go to Gujaborval, Ninali clarifies whether he even knows where to look for him, since the castle is huge, and Mal Laylat orders everyone to follow him, keeping their distance, and only asks not to get caught by the guards, while Sulfina Estphalinia asks what he plans to do. Now Laylat decides to make as much noise as possible. The guards shout that he is caught and that there is nowhere to run. Since he stops, behind him are bars, and ahead are dense rows of guards who are about to close in. Before Mal Layla stands the ruler of Gut Borval. He reads the inscriptions with his skill intently, then laughingly asks how he ended up here. Mal Layla thinks the ruler is trying to lure him outside. Gut Borval says he will punish the guards properly later, and while the other guards tremble with fear, even flinch at his words. Mal Layla asks if he is the ruler of these lands, and Gut Borval exclaims in surprise, does he really know him? Gut Borval smiles smugly and declares that it is not surprising because he is the lord of these lands, Gut Borval, while Mal Layla thinks with disgust what a scoundrel he is. Mal Layla sharply points at the ruler and says he has come to put an end to his evil deeds, causing the air to thicken as the guards twitch uncontrollably from tension. Gut Borval asks in surprise what exactly Mal Layla just said, and he replies, he killed his own political opponents and innocent people, then arranged everything as if it happened by accident. The ruler does not understand and demands how he could say that. Laylat declares that he gained his position by killing people he did not like. 7 years ago, on a snowy day, he killed Ninali's parents so that the witch Zeta would come here, and the whole group of girls freezes in shock, while Ninali herself sees her stunned grandmother, whose eyes show pure fear. The ruler screams that this is nonsense, sweat rolls down his face like rain, and he demands how Laylat can confirm his words, but Mal Laylath calmly replies that he has access to visions of the past. The ruler indignantly insists that this is complete absurdity and that he is being slandered, but Mal Laylat states, in the winter of that year, the year before last, ignoring the protests of the locals, he ordered the mountain to be surveyed the same way. Then Mal Laylat makes another statement. There was a landslide and a rockfall, and he reported the incident to the capital, shifting the blame onto his dead political opponents. When Ali barely holds back tears, she puts her hands to her mouth to hide them, and her grandmother watches everything with hatred, and Mal Laylat asks if he should tell about these people, then draws his sword and swears to repent all his sins and spend the next days in prison until the authorities come to arrest him, and again asks the same question should he tell about them. The ruler continues to roar, while the guards only mutely emerge with sounds and fidget in formation, not understanding what to expect from him next. The guards whisper to themselves, this is within Git's power, and if he hadn't resorted to such a trick, they would have been much more surprised after all. This is entirely in Git's spirit. He can appear in the image of the ruler himself, but the guards still fail to grasp the truth. The ruler jumps up and orders immediately not to stand still, but to seize him. His short jumps due to his short stature make him look like a child, which only adds to the anxiety. Lilat knew in advance. This would happen the moment when everything goes against the rules, and she herself would have to face the consequences of her own premonition. The sword frees itself from all materials. He firmly grips the weapon in one hand, and in the other holds something like a scabbard, torn by doubt whether he really has to go headlong, while Mal Lael looks away in surprise, hearing an approach and sees a man stepping right up. The man with scars, a headband, and a mustache asks what they are doing here. Are they really afraid of a child? And the ruler indignantly retorts, finally appeared, where the hell have they been? The man orders his brother to put on armor, and as if confirming this with strange sounds, directly turns the order into a challenge. Then the ruler maliciously points a finger at Mel and orders to deal with him immediately, adding that killing is unnecessary, he should be thoroughly interrogated. The man orders Mal Lael to listen to him, and even those who are sobbing immediately fall silent upon seeing them, but Mad Lael does not let him finish. With one blow, he knocks the man to the ground, and his armored comrade shouts to his brother. Another attacker in full armor rushes to attack, but Mal Lael just as effortlessly strikes directly in the stomach, causing him to groan in pain and no longer able to say a word, while the ruler in shock only retreats. The ruler trembles and does not understand how everyone can lie while lying unconscious. The man with scars, headband, and mustache is truly unconscious, and his armored comrade trembles, clutching his stomach and looking as if bowing to Mal Lael. While Lilat repeats once more that he will say it, he orders to confess all their sins and wait in the dungeon until representatives of the authorities arrive, and Nanali suddenly freezes in surprise, while the grandmother looks forward resolutely. The ruler twitches with anger, sweat continuously streaming down his face, eyebrows furrowed, and it seems as if he really saw everything, even with such a contemptuous force, as if he knows it in advance. Mal Lilat only remains alert. Laylat confidently declares that Mother Earth sees through everything, and his eyes still glow with the mastery mode, so he speaks firmly, as if every word can be verified by the earth beneath their feet. The ruler thinks aloud that he can receive messages from gods and even from dead people, and sharply asks if he is a medium, and when he hears a denial his face twists with rage. Mel Lalith looks at him as if asking a counter-question. So who do you consider yourself to be, and where did your confidence come from? And then the ruler smiles crookedly, as if drawing a line. Well then, fine. Once a thin stroke of a sword almost accidentally slid over Sylphi's ears, and Mal Lilith immediately noticed this, and said that in Sylph and Estphalinia, the ears move up and down, and for a second a fondness flashed in his eyes. He involuntarily reached out his hand closer. He extended his palm and touched Sylphi's ear, making her scream, and Lisa instantly stood up to defend and angrily snatched out the question, "What are you doing?" Lilat smiles guiltily and excuses himself that he was just lost in thought. In Sylph and Estphalinia, the ears are really very cute. Sylphina Estphalinia blushes and confusedly agrees to let him touch her, and Lisa reacts with hysterical jealousy. Sylphina Estphalinia bursts into a fiery red blush. Lisa shouts sharply that she will not allow it. He should not even try to touch her or come closer, and from that moment she becomes even more vigilant towards Sylphi, while the ruler feels the tension thickening in the air. The ruler thinks that he can receive messages from gods and dead people, so he cautiously asks Lilat if he might be a medium. Mel Lalith looks at him inquisitively, as if trying to understand where he might have been wrong, and then the ruler smiles crookedly and thinks, well, all right. While Lilat reads the ruler's thoughts in his head about having received a potion from a little man in a black cloak, the ruler assures the guards, "Just drink it, and he will become the strongest in the world." When the guards look at him suspiciously, Mal Laylat does not immediately understand what exactly he has planned, but then guesses and gets scared. The potion has terrible properties. It is the meaty mist of an evil dragon, born from the hot blood of a living fierce dragon, carrying its own will. If you pour it on yourself, you gain the strength of a hero along with the curse of chaos. The special effect of this potion grants a limited ability, Curse of Chaos. All the skills of the hero devoured by the evil dragon become available to the one who used the potion, but the body comes under the control of the evil dragon. Layla thinks that it does not matter how strong he becomes thanks to the potion if the body falls under the control of an evil dragon. And what kind of idiot would agree to endure eternal pain? Even the ruler looks away, feeling the threat. The ruler says that it is time to put this into action, and Mal Lilat thinks that yes, the source of power is somewhere, but he does not understand at all what consequences this will bring to this particular ruler. While Mal Lilat decides that before using the potion he will take it for himself, he goes to the ruler, but the potion treacherously breaks in his fist, making him wonder if it broke on its own. The potion drips onto the ruler, and he begins to scream in madness, insisting that he is in pain, that he does not want to suffer, and begging to be saved. While Layla thinks in horror about what is happening inside Git, Sulfina Esfalania shouts at him to stop and not read, and Mal Lilat sharply turns around in surprise. When Fina Esfalania warns him that if he reads it, he will be infected with chaos, Mal Lilat asks who she is, and Lisa is. She utters her name abruptly, as if she does not have time to finish. Lisa blinks in surprise because Sylphina Estwalinia was just here and instantly disappeared, while Clara nearby looks even more shocked. Lilat sees that Sylphina Estfalania is now possessed by Mother Earth. At first it seems to her as if she was simply touched by that power, but in a moment she terribly realizes that Mother Earth has taken over her heart and body. He replies abruptly that there is no time to explain, and orders Lilat to focus on what is happening right in front of them. Lilat asks if she can just read her status without unfolding skills, and receives the answer that it is possible. He shows her unique skill. It is of maximum level, sharply enhances the defense of the body and equipment, and if the enemy's physical attack is lower than the skill level, the damage is completely nullified, and if higher, it is reduced by the difference in ranks. The charged version increases speed when moving forward and adds strength at the moment of impact, but forever leaves a treacherous, chaotic curse that brings all kinds of pain. Sylphilit is confident that he is incredibly strong. The potion equated him with a hero, and the ruler is already overwhelmed by chaos due to the limited skill, Chaos Oath. His spirit and body are exhausted to the limit by the regret that came from the hero himself, and now all parameters are replaced by the characteristics of the hero armor of Galangardes, programmed to kill everything that moves. Fina Estfalania says that now he is like a hero swallowed by a black dragon. Consciousness remains, but the body no longer belongs to him. Paul Laylat admits that he understands the consequences. If he reads this, he will receive a curse along with abilities, so he does not know what to do next. He stares motionless at the cursed text, where dark lines seem to pulse in the air, deceiving determination. Mel Layla puts Sulfina in her place and glances at her contemptuous face. She orders to stop reading this before it is too late. Lilat presses her lips and thinks that she is too weak. This is exactly what Sylphi's status looks like, not a goddess, although her magical power is much higher than his, and this makes it even more unpleasant. Fina Estfalania says that all sorts of rudeness are spinning in his head. She just intercepted his consciousness, and her true form is not at all like his imagination or her own. It may even turn out to be completely opposite. While Lilat tries to convince herself that if she takes control of his consciousness, then he will be able to read the features of the goddess, her control becomes even more vigilant. Spina Estfalania strictly orders him to stop reading, because now he has no spirit. This will only cause a nosebleed, so it is better to solve the problem right in front of his nose. Well, Illit of course understands. She is a goddess and all that, but she keeps repeating over and over only, "Don't do this, don't do that," without any sensible advice. Moreover, this is Sylphi's body because she has no own, so she should behave more modestly, and he already imagined her completely differently. He thought that she warmed him with the heat of her soft and firm forms. This is exactly how he pictured her in his head, and he even chuckled at this unexpected picture. Tina Estfalania angrily shouts at him, accusing him of thinking something indecent, and now she can no longer read his thoughts, but everything is written on his face, and the ruler records her control. The ruler turns into a monster every time and screams in madness that he is in pain, begging for salvation. Mal Lila remembers this and understands. Now he needs to pull himself together and deal with this monster, the ruler. In a terrible form, the ruler again cries out that he is in pain, and Mal Lilith instantly calculates what to do next. The guards are terrified to the edge and flee, and Mal Lilith manages to see the terrible. The ruler is programmed to destroy all moving objects. Mal Lilith raises his voice at everyone around, ordering each to shout so that all stand still and do not move, because if someone stirs, the ruler will attack. He sharply shifts his gaze to one of the guards, and the guard shudders and whispers for the monster not to come closer. But the ruler still moves toward him, and the guard is gripped by fear as he retreats. Sililit shouts, "Stop," and a moment later slashes with his sword at the shoulder as he feels his hardening skill activate. His attacks on Gitza have S rank, so overall they correspond to this class, and the Fortress of Gitza is a skill 1 rank lower, which means what? It turns out the damage is reduced by a fifth, and Sililit, being much smarter than the monster, still maintains control of the situation, but as soon as he finds a vulnerability, the ability activates. He barely manages to inflict a wound, the wound immediately heals, and at that moment the monster turns to counterattack. Sililit steps back a step, quickly looks around and realizes, in close combat there is almost no chance, so the man in armor orders his brother to flee, and the brother, confused, clenches his hands, not understanding what happened. Although Illit understands that things are bad, he decides to use the most powerful hero magic Drago Thunder, and unleashes it with a fiery thunderous flash. His thunder strike shoots into the space, and before him a magical barrier rises, which Mal Lilith manages to see and notices with surprise. It blocked the monster's attack. The monster takes almost no damage, as he has the strength of a hero shield bearer. He snorts through the pain and complains that it hurts. The monster suddenly lunges at the armored knights, hits the man who is unconscious, and together with him, clad in iron, falls through the wall. Malalit considers this incredible strength. Foam streams from the monster's mouth, but he quickly thinks and realizes it has completely lost its mind. The monster attacks Mal Lila, and she retreats at the last moment, but the strike misses and hits the wall, leaving a huge hole after the explosion. Lilat flies back, turns around and quickly looks around to see if everything is okay, and Liflania, like in the spirit of Sylphina, takes on the defense of everyone and asks not to worry about her. Liflania admits that her divine powers are limited, but she can cover them, although no defensive power will hold this attack when he attacks. Lilat smiles, thinking about Sylphina. If the monster's barrage of strikes reaches him, Sylphina will no longer be able to gather the bones with the special effect of the heroic sword, because she can only activate invulnerability once a day, so the moment must be guessed exactly. The monster is already pressing the attack. When Wenster attacks Mal Lila again, she keeps bouncing back, but suddenly realizes. Her hands start to wave faster on their own, and she manages to strike from a blind spot as well, realizing that her attack no longer depends solely on ordinary will. He realizes the monster has lost the rest of its mind, but its movements have become refined, like in a dance. Bina Est Valenia closely watches the clash, and Mal Lilat attacks again, but each time it turns out that no matter how many strikes he manages to land, almost no damage is done. The monster immediately recovers, and with each minute it becomes increasingly difficult to hit him. Even his breath sounds like a spring swinging. He breathes heavily and thinks that everything is going awry. Only defense remains, because at this pace he will run out of breath, and then the monster will kill him and everyone else in this case. An extreme step is needed. At this moment he shouts to Lizzie to throw him a spectacular elixir. Lizzie looks at him in surprise, and Mal Lilith realizes there is no other way. L attacks. The attacks again yield no result. No matter how many strikes he lands, almost no damage remains. The monster immediately recovers, and every moment, like a burden, makes his hits increasingly difficult. He breathes in short gasps, feeling time squeezing him. He breathes heavily and thinks that everything is going badly. He can only defend, but at this pace the air will run out, and he will kill himself along with everyone else. In panic, he shouts to Lizzie to throw him a fake potion. She looks at him in surprise, but Mal Lilith realizes there is no other choice. Stepping back a little after the battle in the city where the hero died, Mal Lilith asked Lisa what she wanted to talk about, and she replied that she wanted to ask him about many things. She asked him why he was next to Lady Sylphie. Since it was not enough for him that he brought Musashi here, he did the same for the Red Knight. Mal Lilith asked for a break. He was too tired, but suddenly he fell to one knee, and Lisa handed him an elven potion that fully restores both physical and magical strength, so he immediately drank it. I read the price on the potion and froze in surprise, because he could not afford something so expensive, so I looked around questioningly, and she answered. She said that it was really expensive because the goddess's elixir is the best restorative potion, and began to explain. She explained that this elixir can heal even mortal wounds and at the same time remove all negative effects. Layla looked at the vial and said it was an amazing elixir, and Lisa ordered him to drink it. He objected, but she gently replied that it was normal after such a fight, especially considering what she saw. He was protecting Lady Sylphie, and then Lisa trembled, stammering PPPP, and uttered words of thanks. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she, sincerely trembling, thanked him and asked him to accept the elven elixir from her as gratitude. Pilate then said that he protected Sylphie because he decided so, sincerely thanked her, and began to swallow. As soon as he swallowed, he felt a warm sensation that something had changed. He felt strength returning to him, as if he had only taken a sip, but the fatigue was already gone, and he thanked again, and Sylphie replied that he only needed to call and she would give it at any moment, then asked what he was going to do next. She finally heard the explanation of why everything happened the way it did, and then they distinguished voices coming from elsewhere, so they had to check. Mal Lilith said he would tell everything later, because first they urgently needed to leave this city. After the fight with the monster, Lisa asks if he is wounded and if he is okay, and Mal Lilith assures her that he is fine and suggests leaving here as soon as possible. Lisa hands him the potion. He catches the bottle and thanks her, and somewhere inside the monster Galen Gardes, shield hero, is already reading the spell to the end. As soon as he finishes, it will become clear how the battle will change. As he reads, the body itself begins to transform, and he bursts out in a terrible scream, while Sylphina Estvelinia screams hysterically. Why did she tell him not to read it? Chaos spreads to Mal Laleth. Sticky mud eats away the earth, sharp needles emerge in all directions, and lava heats the air, and he feels as if he is falling into a living whirlpool. He screams as if he cannot breathe, as if inside they are digging and dismantling by touch. Pain jerks him all over his body. His mind cannot hold on even for a few seconds, and the scream bursts out of him non-stop. He growls through the pain that now is not the time to whine, grabs the potion and drinks it in one gulp. Terrible torment pierces the body, but no longer like before, and he believes he can endure it for only about 10 more seconds, then rushes to Mal Laleth, chasing the disaster. She rushes to the monster and shouts that this time she has had enough. Even more so, she attacks with the sword, but the blow is deflected because the hero's sword's special effect is invulnerability, and the monster's attacks cannot pierce her, shattering against the impenetrable force. The monster shouts in some own language, and Mal Laleth, grimacing, says that now the pressure works not only on him, so for the monster this must be painful. The mister uses healing, and Mal Laleth immediately sees how he begins to heal quickly. He shouts that this is exactly what he expected, and moves on to the next attack. It is lightning strike again. Everything flashes and explodes. Mal Laleth breathes heavily, and when the lightning subsides, a giant hole in the ground stretches before them. Suddenly a new hole appears on the floor. The girl looks at it full of hope, and Sylphina Estvelinia says that it is him, while Clara and another girl gaze forward. She immediately rushes to him, tears shining in her eyes, and Mal Laleth awkwardly smiles and whispers that he has won. Violet falls on his back, presses close and asks if this is the end, and he feels for the potion in his pocket, pulls it out and breathes hoarsely before drinking. The elixir restored his strength, and it appears as a tangible wave, but the illness does not retreat. He lies exhausted and wonders if it is possible to get rid of the elven elixir. If it really is from the chaos curse, he never imagined he could feel so terrible, and he prays never to experience anything like this again. Luna asks about his condition, and Felania, mercilessly and directly, says that he is incorrigible and is going mad again, leans closer and says, "Just think, he voluntarily accepted the curse of the evil dragon," and Mal Lila freezes in shock. He gets up and says, "Let's take a look," and it turns out that he hadn't noticed before her body really grew, but only one part increased, and she answers with a trembling voice that this is a consequence of the curse. Mother Earth descended from the sky and said that the body must at least minimally match her, so she made a small adjustment. Mal Lila. Salat says he understands and thinks that she is worried about her appearance. Sulfina Estvalania replies that he is a good man and quietly sits down. Dawn smiles, saying he is just a smart boy, and offers to pet him. She strokes his head, and he gets flustered and asks to stop. He feels embarrassed, and she replies that there is nothing to be ashamed of. She convinces him that he is a hero of his time, not for nothing. It seemed as if he had defeated Ace Drago, and Dawn admits that everything happened exactly that way. Dawn adds the reason was in his powers, but at the same time he had some strange feeling, as if at the moment of victory something else was acting beside him. He did not know whether it was an intuitive feeling or a sudden flash of inspiration, but it seemed to him, if he trusted this feeling, everything would work out for him. Esteliana wonders if these are the eyes of truth, and Mal Leela stands up and asks what that is, listening carefully to the answer. Mal Leela explains that divine eyes are an ability available only to gods, and heavenly eyes are an ability that God grants to a person. She adds that the eyes of truth are an ability that a person has developed independently and transformed into a unique skill, thanks to which one can find the most optimal solution based on accumulated experience. Esteliana hesitates whether these are really the eyes of truth, and Mal Leela stands up again and asks what it is to get an explanation. This means that the divine eyes are an ability available only to gods, while the heavenly eyes are a gift that God gives to a person. Eyes of truth are a skill that a person develops within themselves, turning it into a unique ability. Thanks to it, they find the most optimal solution based on accumulated experience, and then ask if it concerns someone specific. He asks if this is also an ability of Drago from R, and she confirms. Mel Lillet adds that everything is clear to him because the cool one is not himself, but precisely Drago from R. Safina Esfelania hits him on the head and immediately asks why he is so disappointed, orders him to listen to the end, and Mal Leela runs her fingers over his head and convinces him that it does not hurt at all. Tina Estfelania says that our Drago really was the owner of true eyes, but used this ability even before he read them, and Mal Leela attentively absorbs the explanation. Silphilet admits that he remembers nothing, explaining, he simply did not realize how it happened until, after reading about Drago R, a person with the same abilities, he understood that he acted only on intuition. Nina Estfelania asks him to remember, every time he found himself in a difficult situation, he chose the best solution and gives an example from his fight. After you defeated Hegel Ois, you cannot immediately master the skill you just acquired because time and clarity in sensations are needed. Even in your case, when you decided to overcome Hegelois relying on what you already had, you understood. You should respond with a strike only when you have fully recovered. Nina says that you feel the features of unique skills and use them to the fullest, so in the fight with Musashi and in other clashes, you instantly make optimal decisions, and not everyone is capable of that. Mal Lelit never wanted to stand out among others, but deep down he still waited for his time to be proud of himself, quietly reaching for the role of a true hero. He sought to lead a quiet and peaceful life, but reality turned out to be harsher than he expected. However, he won't say that he dislikes it, it's just that the thought of having to answer again for himself and others gnaws at him. That is why he thinks that being someone to be proud of is by no means bad, and he awkwardly smiles as if trying to believe it for the first time, with Safina supporting him nearby. Marina Estvalania tells him that sometimes he behaves like a real fool, especially when he has no one to read in the eyes and no one to watch, so he catches himself thinking that maybe she is right. After all, he let Lara get too close to Marion, even kissed her, and during the shot from the magic bullet showed carelessness, and Safina immediately noticed. This does not look like bravery, but a dangerously wrong calculation. Nina Estvalania says that he has no experience, so nothing can be done, but asks him to be more careful in the future. While I let everything go by itself, this woman thinks only of herself, and Sulfina mockingly throws, what else can you expect from a goddess? Esielefine Estvlania rises to the main problem and declares that the evil dragon has already begun to act, so everyone freezes in shock and looks at her. Tina Estvalania asserts that they must finish everything here and move on to the main evil. The evil dragon has already begun to act, and at her words, everyone looks at her in amazement. It asks if it is true that the evil dragon has begun to act, although it is still sealed, and she replies that the dragon itself has not yet taken a step personally, it has only acted through third parties. He unmistakably identified who it was, the same one who gave Jayu Borval the potion with the muscle of the evil dragon, and Mel Layla also realized this. Salat says that he is also gnawed by the question of who exactly was behind that spectacle, either some man in a black cloak or a woman trembling under it, but the face could not be seen. Even she, the goddess, could not comprehend who it was, so it is not surprising that Mel Layla also failed to read these signs. Perhaps some god really stood before them. Slaleth claims that he climbed out of the wall and vanished right into the floor, and that is exactly how he read it in Gouda. Sulfina Estvalania adds, if this creature can cross the border, then among those it knows, it has no idea who it could be, so she suggests leaving the matter for now and not taking rash steps. And most importantly, the evil dragon's target is Mal. Mal Lilat notices that Sylphine Estvalania is the old Sylphi, who once did not like pepper, and quietly snorts, thinking she has the same grimace as back then. The earth seems to hint to Miles that there is something funny here, and he nods with a smile. Of course, while Sylphi promptly replies that he imagines her as prey, but he himself hunts her. Slaleth asks Miles what to do next, offering to confront the evil dragon himself, and Sylphi coldly distinguishes confidence from foolishness and cuts off the phrase with a short command. Sylphi tells him that he is still weak, admitting, "It is sad to hear, but until strength grows, their hands are tied," and she barely smiles as if hiding a plan. Miles cunningly buys time and declares, since Sylphi is already here, she will personally teach him a few lessons, and boldness flashes in his gaze. Mal Lilith trembles and begs not to make an angry face on Sylphi's body, quickly apologizing and fearing what her reaction will be. Mal Lila notices from Sylphia's sad expression that he accidentally overheard, and involuntarily wonders if this arrogant goddess will so easily agree to apologize. Slaleth explains that for him Sylphina Estphilania is a symbol of healing, and Sylphia herself asserts in denial. Rather, Mother Earth should be that symbol, and stubbornly emphasizes her opinion. She teaches how to become stronger, ordering to read again and again as much as possible, and Mal Lila asks if it is correct to apply these readings against strong opponents. When he hears this a second time, Sylphia irritably asks from whom he got the advice, and Mal Lila replies, "From ours, Drago," because during the reading about the hero's sword, it was Drago who told him the same. Mal Lila coughs, washes up, and solemnly warns that the black dragon might be plotting something evil again, so he will have to be extremely careful. In the silence, Mal Lilith asks Malala if that is all, and when she answers with a trembling voice, "That is all," he thanks her and calls this advice very vague, to which she responds indignantly with a shriek. At that moment, he recalls dreams he should not have told her at all, since he heard them from our Drago, and decides to pretend he is hearing them for the first time, and to thank her as Malala advises him. Layla looks impressed as the goddess teaches him deceit, and Mother Earth painfully admits that it is hard for her to leave them, but she still must go and tells him the main thing. She asks him to remove the curse from Sylphi as soon as possible, because without memories, he will not be able to use the power of the Priestess of Light. He asks if he understood, and suggests a rule to close his eyes, and he blushes and hastily confirms that he understood. Her earth element declares that it wants to add something else. She forcibly merged with Sylphi's body, although Sylphi did not call her, and because of this caused her harm, so everyone fearfully looks for an answer about what exactly happened, and suddenly notices changes. Sylphi now has different signs, golden eyes, and a more curved figure, and she looks at those present completely innocently, as if she does not understand why everyone is so tense. Mal Lilith and Lisa simultaneously burst out shouting, accusing her of what she did to their precious sweet Sylphi, and Lisa sharply asks if she understands the consequences that Mal Lilith demands that she apologize. She apologizes, and as soon as those words are spoken, the real Sulphina Philiania comes to her senses and falls helplessly. Mal immediately catches her, and she, delighted by the moment, recognizes him. Mal Lilith notices her and cautiously asks if she is all right, if she feels no pain, and Sylphi replies that no, just a bit dizzy, and they begin to explain to her what to do next. She is told to drink the elven potion. She says it is extremely valuable. Everyone assures her that it is fine, and she swallows it without hesitation. She freezes, suddenly stands up, and declares that it is incredible, she is simply wonderful, and Clara immediately moves on to the next words. Clara explains that Sulphina Estvalnia has returned, and she still has her huge parameters, which makes Clara feel very uneasy. She adds that it seems Sulphina will live for some more time, and Noli breaks into a scream, trembling with fear. Noli asks Mal Layla what he will do next, since she can remove the curse of oblivion at any moment. Ninali asks if he knows what will happen, and addresses her grandmother with the same anxious question about whether there is a problem. Everyone freezes in surprise and waits for an answer. The curse of oblivion is vile and very dangerous, because even if it can be removed, there remains one terrible consequence, and he hesitates whether to tell her the truth, but still orders Sylphina Estphilania to listen carefully before speaking further. He reproaches her for acting selfishly and not quite correctly, but at the same time feels he must tell her the truth, and begins to explain what will happen next. As soon as the curse of oblivion is lifted, all her memories from the moment the curse began to act will disappear. Sophina feels as if the ground is slipping from under her feet. Athena addresses Philania, and he meets her gaze, noticing disappointment and sadness, as if she has already lost everything, and she quietly asks if it is true that the memories will be erased forever. She asks if this means that she will really forget everything that happened this year about Mal Leela and every moment spent together with him. Everyone tries to talk to Clara and Lisa about grandmother and Ninali, and then the same question arises again. Will she really forget everything? They look at her with pity. Lilat insists that it will be so, but Sulfina Estfalania sharply objects. She does not want this. He suddenly rushes to Mal Lilat, shakes him, and exclaims that she does not want to forget, holding on as if to the last thread. Keep shouting, why should she forget everything? He explains that memories of the time when the curse was placed on her, or lost memories from the past, and she will have to choose one. When Nina Estfalania begins to cry, she trembles and says she does not want to choose anything, and does not want to remove the curse, because she is afraid of losing what still holds her. She reasons that if she had to forget him, it would be better to leave everything as it is, while he hesitantly calls her by name and pushes her away, as if trying to stop the feelings. When Sulfina drives Felania away from herself and orders her to return her memories, Felania convulsively twitches, shakes her head convulsively, and cannot restrain a sharp, painful movement. Laeliut says that her mother, the village where she was born, all this must be in memory, and that she must become a priestess of light again, continuing to speak as if pointing the way that must not be refused. He is sure that this is exactly what she wanted even before she lost her memory, and Felania, crying, does not look away from him, as if the memory is finally beginning to return. Alongside his words, pressure is felt. He forced her, and it was not a childish desire, but gathered strength. Felania becomes a priestess of light with noble, unwavering determination. She did not delay long. She accepted her fate, ready to die, and with full determination set out to find the hero's successor, because he does not want this. He would have ignored her request even when she did not yet realize what she was asking for, so he was already about to say something, squeezing Sylphie's shoulders, while at that moment she was crying. Grand Mazetta broke off mid-word, as if her voice did not manage to finish the formula, and he awkwardly heard a warning, not to pressure her, but to let her make the decision herself. Emma says that if she is going to remove the curse, it is better to do it quickly, but instead of rushing, why not visit home there, where she can think everything over carefully, while the guard silently watches them. The guards, ordered to sit silently in the carriage, were taking the victims, and Sylphina Estwalinia covered her face with her forearms and stubbornly repeated again that she does not want to forget, even when she is inscribed Sylphina Estwalinia, Sylphina Estwalinia, Sylphina Estwalinia, like a seal that does not let her escape from memory. Trembling and crying, Mal Lilith sadly looks at everything around, and grandmother quietly says that she is hungry, while Non-Ally guiltily whispers that she did not prepare the usual dish, and they all sit together at the table. At the table, Mal Lilith apologizes for the tears. Everyone tries to stop him and assures, no need, he is their savior, and Lisa carefully wipes his cheeks and pushes the plate closer. Anna turns to Sulfina Estfalinia and says that she is eating carrots, although she never liked them before. She admits that now she still does not like them, but eats anyway to be strong. She explains that it was Mel Layla who told her that she is healthy, and when Anna finishes, Lisa smiles and gently sums up how wonderful she is. Layla sadly lowers her gaze, and later tells everyone that she will sleep in the carriage. Ninali immediately replies that all 6 of them will fit, and he adds, it will be quiet and safe there. Safina was still just a boy and slept in the same bed with the girls, and somehow it was uncomfortable, although he could have lain on the floor, but it would still be better in the cart. Fina Felania told him that she would go with him, and really wanted to be near Mal, so eventually they both sat in the cart together, and she began to ask. He asked if she remembered. Mal looked away and spoke to her, and Fina replied, if he remembers how they first met, it was 3 days ago. Several days had passed since the church took her in, and Sulfina Estfalania still remembered nothing. She could read and write and learned about the world around, while 3 squirrels sat nearby enjoying nuts as she stared at them. When the squirrels seemed to sense that something was wrong with her, Sulfina knew absolutely nothing about herself. Neither name, nor age, nor family, nor home, and she sat on the doorstep, hiding her face in her hands again and staring at her knees, also feeling that she had no way back. She could not speak properly either with the Holy Father or with people in the church, so she trembled inside and thought, why is she so afraid if it is all just a spasm and the trembling of squirrels? Look at her and you will run away. She opens her eyes and sees a flower in front of her, which someone is handing directly to her. Him stands next to Mal. Leela grimaces as if she is about to laugh or burst from tension, and he greets and calls her to meet, extending this flower. In response, she trembles. She trembles and is so afraid that tears are about to appear in her eyes, and he asks, Sylphie, why are you looking at me like that? She immediately freezes as if she cannot utter a word. He immediately apologizes and says he did not want to scare her, although of course he lies. He wanted to scare her, it just happened that he intended to surprise, not frighten. Sulfina Esfelania pressed against the door. He demonstratively makes the same face and says that everyone in the village laughed when he did that, wondering how children react differently. Marina Estvelinia frightfully asks for forgiveness and asks who he is, and he introduces himself. His name is Mel, extending his hand forward. He releases the flower from his palm outside, smiles, and says that he lives all alone on the very outskirts, so he is sincerely glad to meet her. She is about to respond, but freezes from the unexpected kindness. As soon as he tries to ask her about something, she immediately sets a condition. Can he call her simply Sylphie, and he, in turn, agrees that he can only be addressed as Mel. Tina Estfelania asks him to say if he has any business, and Mel replies no. He just wanted to talk to someone during his breaks from work, and Tina says she is also not against chatting a bit. She has no one to talk to, so she sadly looks at the flower, and Mal Lilet says he understands that, then smiles at her. Miles says that then he will talk to her, asks a question because she does not yet know this city well, and she immediately has a thought. Finally, she can ask for help and support. He decided that he is a frivolous and cheerful guy, so he began to come every day during lunch break, told her various things indifferent to how coldly she treated him, and sincerely tried to lift her mood. But suddenly he stopped coming, and the girl, amusing herself with squirrels, wondered if he would never return. Somewhere down below, the girls start running. She gets up and sees how Mal Lilat himself is searching for Sylph and Estfelina, and when he realizes he doesn't know where she is suddenly overcome with anxiety. Suddenly he flinches and rushes to hug him, but he manages to raise his hand to stop her, and at that moment he sees from the side how she has already pressed herself against him, both shocked, and she pulls away and walks away, not knowing what to do next. Having moved away from him, she hides her eyes and says that she is not happy to see him at all and did not want to hug, so he should not think too much, and Mel Lila wonders, is she really angry, and voices this directly to him. She tells him that she already thought he would not come anymore, and with these words she pauses while he begins to justify himself that he wanted to come earlier and tries to explain what held him back. He says he couldn't come because colleagues found out he was leaving the workplace without permission and gave him a scolding, although he fulfilled the daily quota, tried not to cause problems for anyone, and generally worked tirelessly, after which he takes her hand as if asking her to believe him. He takes her palm more firmly and says that today is his day off after 2 weeks of hard work, and he also invited her to be herself, and Leela, without looking away, asks what he meant. She asks where exactly he is smiling, and he replies that it is a wonderful place, so she obediently follows him, feeling how his palm is rough but warm, and they finally arrive. Sulfina Estvelinia looks with surprise at the multitude of flowers and asks if they can really impress her. Because it is incredibly beautiful here, he picks flowers for her and says that she can talk to him as freely as to a friend. That is exactly what he asked of her. You just have to wait a little. He weaves a wreath from flowers and solemnly gives it to her, explaining that recently her mother made the same one, and now it is its time for Sulfina Estvelinia. The wreath sits on her head, and she enthusiastically says that now she looks like a princess, then looks at him in surprise and carefully touches the wreath, feeling how a thought envelops her that takes her breath away. He wonders if he really took his first day off in 2 weeks to bring her here, and she begins to understand. He has always been attentive to her, never missed an opportunity to support her. She never got irritated or angry, she only tried to cheer up, smiled broadly, and thanked him as if it became easier to breathe. It seemed that nothing special had happened, but in her gray, everyday life, a little happiness suddenly appeared, something that warmed and required no proof. That night she hoped that the happy days would continue, and in her memory surfaced the carriage where they sat together. Mal Lilith says he remembers those days and immediately truly wanted to cheer her up, but she grabs him, and he gasps and confusedly whispers, "What's wrong with him? I don't know, I don't know, I don't know." She softens, touches his clothes, he turns his head and calls her, and she presses closer and hugs him so tightly that his words get lost in the warmth. She told him it would be better if he told her nothing. That's what she thought until now, and still believed. If she didn't know that she would forget him, she wouldn't have to suffer so much, and Malalit kept surfacing again and again in her mind. Malalit asks Sulfina Estvelinia for forgiveness, and she replies, "Don't apologize," and adds that now she thinks otherwise. If she didn't know, and if her curse were lifted, deep in her soul she would still be tormented by bitter longing. So the name Malalit bursts in her thoughts with endless repetition. Malalit, 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 Malalit. Lilat says he will tell her everything she seeks and insists, even events he himself does not remember, he will be able to read thanks to his ability of evaluation. after which he gently strokes her arm as if calming her before a storm. He leans his head closer and assures, he will tell her everything, absolutely everything she forgets. His smile flashes for a moment, and excitement rises in her chest, bright and rebellious. He anxiously asks, do it tell her everything, smiles and throws a promise that even if she does not ask and even if she hates him, he will still tell her the truth. She laughs boldly as if these words gave her wings. He laughs, declares that he is exactly the same, smiles the same way, and solemnly says he will tell her everything, even if she hates him. He begins to cry and whispers that it is really so, and she closes her eyes and confesses that she loves him. Layla looks at her with surprise, lowers her head, and with a trembling voice says she will never forget and then starts shouting, she will never forget. She openly sobs, asks what happened between them, even if someday everything will be forgotten, even if she forgets everything, she will never forget her love for him, and when they embrace, her tears flow even more strongly. When Lilette finally understands that her power is real, not like his, he hugs her and whispers that he loves her very much too, because it took him a long time to realize it. It took him so much courage to tell her what he feels, and by dawn everyone was gathering until Selfina stood beside him. Fina Estfalinia asks Mal to do it. Ninali hesitates whether he can lift the curse, and grandmother sternly warns. Now he will in no case see her and will not even see himself, yet still calls him a good person, and he is going to act. Lilette will first read Zeta, then ask Sylphina Estfalania to close her eyes. Mal will touch her forehead with 2 fingers and begin a spell in an unknown language, from which a sharp, broken sound bursts out shshshshshshshshshsh. A mark shines on her forehead. Mal Lelate sees that the curse is lifted, and everyone asks how Sylphina Estfalania feels and whether she remembers her name. Tina Estfalania puts Mal Laylat in his place, who he is, and why there is such a sad smile in his eyes. He only sighs, thinking that it hurts even more because of this. Overcoming himself, Malo Leylota feigns politeness and introduces himself, and Tina looks at Lisa and suddenly recognizes her, as if a mosaic assembled in memory comes to life. Sylphina Estfalania does not remember what happened in the last year, so for her only Lisa exists here, a stranger and distant, as if from another world. Malo Leylota asks Lisa to tell Sylphi everything, and he himself steps back. He is already leaving, barely uttering that he will wait in the next room, when suddenly Sylphina Estfalania rushes from behind and hugs him tightly. From surprise he gasps, as if the air was knocked out of his chest. Sylphina Estfalania, looking at them in surprise, asks Mal Laylat who he is, and one grandmother proudly watches this scene. He wants to answer, but his voice flees from excitement. He solemnly says that he will tell her everything down to the last detail, but Sylphina Estfalania waves it off. She does not know him, does not remember either the meeting or the conversation. She does not understand why she felt eerie, why she hugged him so tightly to not let him go, why tears welled up in her eyes by themselves, and why she cherishes him so much. Mel Lila rereads this in his thoughts, and then he suddenly remembers. He recalls her words about never forgetting her love for him, and feels, it is true, after which he hugs her even tighter. He pauses for a moment in confusion, and thinks that Sylphina Estfalania is truly incredible, so he tells her that she is also very dear to him, and she suddenly opens her eyes and quietly says that she does not understand why, but if he says so she believes. Mel Lillet runs through his mind the thought about that Sylphia who did not know him, and about the one who remembers only what he himself did not know, yet it was still the very Sylphia he knows, and a quiet tension falls in the house. On the large table, overloaded with food and drinks, Mal Lillet says that tomorrow they will set out. Those present immediately ask how everything will be organized further. Ask the soldiers to send appraisers as soon as possible so that everyone will know. Zeta was imprisoned on false charges and for acts that were pinned on him for the Gouda. He explains that as soon as the appraisers arrive, the truth will become obvious. Meanwhile, no one suspects that grandmother cursed the city and that Nenali lifted the curse. Grandmother silently looked his way, keeping the secret under control. She looks at him and says that, besides him, Mal Lillet awkwardly laughs in response. Then he turns to grandmother Zeta. He addresses grandmother Zeta and assures her that she will definitely not be sent to prison. Ninali exhales with relief, and grandmother quietly nods as if she finally let go of fear. Someone modestly says that she was prepared for this, so she will not be very upset even if she is caught. She gets indignant and shouts at her grandmother, while others only smile and exchange glances. Zeta says that there is no need to worry. Zeta says that Mal Lillat has done so much for the two of them, so she will make sure his efforts are not in vain. Mal Lillat smiles and replies that he did it because he wanted to. Non-Nili begins to thank him, and Sylphie Estphalianus and Malalit turn to her, listening to her words of gratitude. With a gentle smile, Non-Nili thanks him for saving them, and Malalit laughs and says it's nothing. Molly continues to look at Mal Layla, her cheeks reddening and her gaze blurring, while Sylphie Estphalianus, slightly shaking her head, does not take her eyes off them and carefully watches their reactions to each other. She thought to herself, she herself does not understand why, but it annoys her, and she begins to blush even more and pouts, as if shielding herself from everything unnecessary. Saying goodbye, they thank Zeta and Ninali for everything, but he is immediately told to stop saying that, since thanks should go to her, and she is sure that everything will be fine with him, yet still whispers, "Be careful on the road." While I respond to them with smiles and words of thanks, Sylphie Estphalianus smiles just as radiantly in return, and Non-Ally approaches too hesitantly and awkwardly, hiding her insecurity. Tears are already shining in her eyes. She is even more ashamed and asks if he will come here again, since he says he will return. Of course, he will come as soon as he finishes all his affairs, and he will definitely come. So Ninali takes his hand, which holds the rope for controlling the cart, and Mal Layla presses against him more tightly than propriety allows. She grabs his hand and swears from the bottom of her heart that she will always wait for him, and Mal Layla, looking at her awkwardly, blushes and hurries to explain that it was not intentional. Ninali confidently says that he will definitely come, and Sylphie Estphalianus stays nearby and continues to look at him with resentment, as if holding back jealousy in her chest. He already wants to say something else, but Sylphie Estphalianus sharply pulls the rope and orders him to go away, with such a face that jealousy is readable without words, and they all set off. Sylphie Estphalianus sits down confidently and presses Mal Layla to her chest, smiling proudly, while the carriage begins to move, and Nayanali along with Zeta remain behind on the road. Although he still tends to him awkwardly, Grandmother notices all this and thinks that he is still the same hero who saved them, so nothing strange. She just exhales as if finally calmed down. I don't know if the day will ever come when Nanali will marry and be able to see her grandchildren. She asks Grandmother what is wrong with her, and she replies, "Nothing, it just seemed that she wants to live many, many more years," and quietly adds, "Dear." The carriage continues to roll, and Sylphie Estphaliani still presses close to Mal Leela, who clumsily tries to steer but cannot move. He turns to her. He approaches her and asks if she was angry, and she proudly and contentedly replies that no, she was not angry at him. He understands that if he uses the appraisal skill, he will find out everything, but he is afraid, so he decides to abandon this idea for a few days. While they were on the road, he talked with Sylphie S. Filians about the events of this year, and she listened to him with joy and with a barely noticeable shadow of sadness. And thanks to his appraisal skill, he suddenly remembered something that had previously been completely erased from memory, and they continued to travel further. The road stretched on. Sylphie Estphalianus was almost falling asleep. Clara was eating with pleasure, and Lisa was carefully wiping her rifle with a cloth. Violet noticed something interesting and loudly called Sylphie Estphalianese, who was just waking up swollen, with tired eyes, and reaching out her hand to rub her face and wake up. She blinks and rubs her eyes, and Mal Layla awkwardly apologizes and asks if he woke her, to which she replies, "Yes," and asks what happened, so he calls her to look at what caught Violet's attention. She says he wants to show her something. Without unnecessary words, she agrees and follows him. There are 4 of them, and their footsteps quietly disappear among the trees. They walk through the forest, and Mel Lillet firmly holds Sylphie Estphalioni's hand, warning her that there are large stones here, so she needs to be careful. While he walked beside Filians, holding her hand, he asked something that turned her thoughts upside down. His palm is firm but at the same time warm, and she cannot figure it out for a long time. As they walked along the road, she thought, she still knows nothing about Mel Lilu, but has a strange feeling as if she already knows him too well, and now they are coming outside. In a field full of flowers, Mel Lillet announces that they are right here, and the girls among them, Clara Scrudge, look at this beauty with admiration and surprise. Screeches creak, and suddenly it looks extraordinarily beautiful. Lisa looks back and says that such a picture makes all thoughts about the evil dragon disappear. Man notices something and asks Mala Lilu what she is doing. She squats among the fragrant flowers and gathers them, promising that she will find out everything very soon, while he weaves a wreath with careful movements. The wreath again places his wreath on Sylphie Estphalioni's head, and smiling, says that he is ready. Sylphie Estphalioni turns to him in surprise, as if she does not believe her own happiness. Sylphilet repeats the same. In her opinion, she really looks like a princess more precisely, just as a real princess should look at this moment. Sylphie Estphalioni begins to blush, stares at him and silently holds a pause, Mala Lilu laughs and says that it is not bad and worth repeating again, and Clara adds that it is incredible because Sylphie Estfilioni finally understood everything, and she presses him closer, not taking her eyes off. She runs her fingers over her own hands, quietly confessing that she fell in love with this man, and it is about Mel for the second time, and now stubbornly continues her path towards feelings. She suddenly realizes that she does not even need to recall how she once loved Mal Leela, because now she has fallen in love with him again, and tightly closes her palms as if holding this decision. Closing her eyes, she calmly decides. They will create shared memories, and she rubs the wreath between her fingers so gently that it seems it will come to life with warm light any moment now. It seemed like an ordinary and unremarkable garland, but Lisa tries to weave a wreath and is slightly confused, laughs with Sylph Estfaliania. Clara tenderly tells her that she is so sweet, and meanwhile the air already senses a change of events. This time in the kingdom of Marian Verdemian, she prepares and announces that she is setting off on a journey, mounts a horse and looks at Joseph, who salutes her and asks her to be careful, and suddenly there is a surprise felt all around. Finally, Marian Verdemian calls him father and asks him to stop, because she is no longer a commander, and not even a knight. She says that she has taken on the search for a hero, but it is an extremely secret mission that cannot be disclosed. With a smile, as if now she is a criminal expelled from the capital, Marian asks to forgive her hopeless daughter, and he quietly laughs. Chuckling, he says that the criminal has too happy a face, and she closes her eyes, also chuckles and replies, that is because her dreamed wish has come true. She was summoned to the capital and expelled from the knightly fellowship, so she asked to be given a task to find the hero, and separately explained how important it was to also find his sword, although the chances looked illusory. Although her guilt was already forgiven, she seeks to atone for everything with this mission brave. As for her, and Hosef closes his eyes and mutters, oh, this fiery nature of hers, looking at her with shaky but compassionate seriousness. She reaches out her hand to him and asks what this thing is. If he were not nearby, she would have broken. When she became a knight, he only watched from afar, while she clenches her fingers as if still holding the cold shackles of memories, driving away doubts. She reaches out her hand to him and asks what this thing is. If he were not nearby, she would have broken. When she became a knight, he only watched from afar, while she clenches her fingers as if still holding the cold shackles of memories, driving away doubts. He takes the question from her and asks if she can manage on her own without his help. She answers stubbornly and honestly that she will not say no, because she is only a little scared, and then explains why she will not retreat. She explains that she must challenge the odds and learn to control the berserker state, which she had so far avoided, and, stammering on the word, recalls that her father is connected with all this with the reason that does not let her stop. Mother says that he understands all this clearly, so it is as he thinks, and he wishes her luck and asks her to definitely take care of herself. You can buy it, says Marian Verdemian, and without delay, she announces that she is setting off, riding ahead and not looking back, leaving the father behind. Only then do Mel Lillet, Sylphie Estfalians, and Lisa arrive safely in Sylphie Estfalians' homeland, the land of Filians. Its northwest borders Filianese, and the place here is called Water Area. Springs gush right from beneath the earth. A waterfall falls as if pouring into these waters, and all around is lush greenery. Nearby lies the hot spring Mal Leila. He is allowed to bathe and breathe deeply as if he is already in paradise, where every exhale lightens the heart. And now, he immerses himself in the hot water until they finally arrive at the spring. Right here in this water area, when the Queen Sylphie's mother learned of their arrival, she came out to meet them and arranged peaceful preparations in honor of the guests. Then he was also told that they were glad to see them and called him a hero, so he recalled the slimmer figure of Lady Filianese and thought how well she carries herself, and then his gaze slid further into the darkness, searching for that same familiar calm. He looks at the sky, especially at the moon, and thinks how nice it would be to eat something tasty and relax in the hot baths that relieve fatigue after a long journey. He was entrusted to deliver Sylphie Estfaliones to her homeland, and now he can finally breathe a sigh of relief. He loves the bath, his eyelids slowly close, but here someone approaches to interrupt his sleep. Someone tells him that it is better not to fall asleep here, it is dangerous, so he suddenly opens his swollen eyes and begins to look around to see who said this, feeling fear tighten his chest. Eyes wide with surprise, he sees before him the Queen of Filians, the slimmer Filians, and steps back. She sharply turns and asks several times what is happening, not believing that he is really here. She asks him if he came voluntarily. She asks if he likes their hot springs, and Mel Lelate repeatedly tells himself that he must not look at her, so he lowers his gaze. He lowers his eyes and tilts his head, and the queen laughs and says that he must not go too far from her, otherwise they won't be able to talk. He opens his mouth to reply. His gaze rests on the queen ahead, and a thought flashes like lightning in his mind. Here all dreams and hopes really come true. The queen says that is exactly why she was waiting for him. He insists that he is a boy, and jokingly asks if she wants him to touch her, then immediately waits impatiently for an answer. He enthusiastically asks if it is really possible, but then comes to his senses and steps back again, causing Queen Elena to laugh. He asks why she is doing this, and Queen Elena replies that she needed to talk alone with the hero. Then he thinks that perhaps she should have quietly crept into his bed at night, and he imagines her apologizing for the intrusion, then locks the thought inside himself and hides a smile. His eyes flare up again, and he shouts sharply that both options are unacceptable, and the queen smiles radiantly because she likes to play with him, and he turns away. He sharply moves away from her and asks what exactly she wanted to talk to him about, and she laughs and says that now she is calm and he does not understand at all what is happening. He suddenly realizes and asks again if she really said that, which immediately makes him feel hot, and he blushes. Cleaner replied that she said exactly that. In their royal family, when children grow up, everyone becomes similar to each other both in face and figure. Layla does not understand a word, so she moves even closer to him, as if it brings her special joy, but he still cannot understand her hints. He only then realizes what exactly is touching his back, and Queen Elena states that the girl is still too young to reproduce, while at the same time acknowledging the heroes have physiological needs, so she asks him to pull himself together. These words shock him, and he replies to her in a confused, embarrassed tone. He pretends not to understand the hints with which she steers the conversation in the right direction, and when she says she came to ask him a favor, he casts a glance as if she likes exactly what is big, and she smiles in response. The little monkey yawns widely and repeats again that this is exactly why she said it. Now he can rest peacefully. While Leela weighs to herself whether it is worth warning him not to touch her dear daughter, he loudly declares that he has only pure feelings for Sylphie Estphalion as her daughter, and Queen Elena listens attentively, restraining her emotions. The cleaner says that this may be true now, but someday both she and he will become adult girls, so she asks, isn't it time to finally let out everything Mel has accumulated inside her? He does not understand who this strange woman is and what she even wants from him. Finally, he raises his gaze to her, as if trying to grasp what it is about. Finally, Mother told him seriously that it was half a joke, and he immediately understood. That is, she speaks half seriously, because then she only hinted that there is some meaning in it. Because 2 days ago he received a divine revelation, he asked if this revelation was from Mother Earth. Next to her a creature stood silently and confirmed. Yes, however Sylphie Estphalion did not say anything to her, and there was no feeling as if a goddess had entered her. She only smiled and looked away. Miles explained what this means. Mr. Hero also knows that Sylphie Estphalion was possessed by Mother Earth, and that now her mother is already the priestess of light, and she was the one who conducted the session 2 days earlier. Sylphie's mother said that everything fits together. She admitted that she was impressed by Lisa's story. Allegedly, Spiritism is a way to borrow a piece of divine consciousness and allow it to manifest its will to this world, and she heard that this will can push people to decisions even when they doubt. That Sylphie Estphalion, capable of fully accepting the personality of Mother Earth, believes that her daughter Mel Lilith has incredible talent, and Mel Lilith herself thinks, for me, this is still not a normal state. Mal Leela asks what prophecy she received, and she answers without any hesitation. An evil dragon is strengthened by unholy creatures. That's exactly what she was told. Lilette doesn't understand and asks what these unholy creatures are, maybe fairies, but she rejects that. She never thought Mr. Hero was so enlightened, since fairies are absolute evil. Stories are whimsical, and again whimsical. Once they forged the hero's sword and gave it to Drago, but now, it seems, they have changed sides, and even on MT. Lilith, it feels like they are not playing by the right rules. While Acelet begins to think, he recalls Drago's words. Fairies are absolute evil, so they will never be his allies, but they won't become enemies either, so he should use them while he has the chance. If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have to be at odds with them, he would cleverly profit from it, so he asks, Queen, why don't you meet with the fairies? But she doesn't understand what he is talking about. While Illit tries to explain that since they don't know the fairies' intentions, it's better to meet and find out what they want, the queen begins to answer with the same composure everyone expected from her. The queen suddenly smiles and says what was meant by hero, rather what suits Lord Mel, and he immediately blushes. Someone notes that the question is not whether to meet, but how exactly to meet the fairies. He asks, but they cannot fly here, so the queen replies that another way to communicate is needed. To make everything pleasant, she will look for ways to meet them, gently calling Mal Lilith Lord. Lilette says he feels uncomfortable when she calls him hero or lord, so he asks, maybe just call him Mal at first. She hesitates before agreeing to this form of address. If she is surprised, she smiles and says, so it is, everything is clear to her. She joyfully announces that he will become her son-in-law, and it will be so in any case, and those words paralyze him with fear. Frightened and stunned, he asks what son-in-law and son mean. The queen replies that it is not yet a finalized agreement, and she extends her hand to him. She opens her arms, calls him closer to her, orders to call mother, and to press against her chest for warm embraces, and he freezes, not taking his eyes off her. She teases briefly on the spot, then bursts into laughter and says she will not do that, asks for forgiveness, and then jokingly says how cute it is to see his reaction and asks. He adds that there is a grain of truth in every joke, because in Sylphie Estfilion's feelings for him, there is not only love but also boundless trust, and he smiles. He smiles at these words and tells her that he knows this. Although he has not yet fully sorted out his feelings to tell the truth, he is not sure if he is ready to marry her, but she has already become a light for him. Just as she was his light, his lonely life was filled with dull weekdays, but as soon as he first saw Sylphie, everything changed. When I first saw Sylphie, I asked Filione about her smile, and my life became brighter and brighter, because these feelings are sincere for me. Gail says she feels dizzy and suggests she will leave first, and he immediately turns away. He steps back and repeats to himself several times that he will not look until the queen calls him by name, and he does turn his gaze. After her call, he is already nearby. She bows and thanks him for saving her daughter, and he clearly understands exactly why. The way she thanked sounded not like a queen, and not like a priestess of light, rather like a tenderly loving mother whispering words of gratitude from the heart. Time has passed since Eleanor left, but he still has not gotten out of the water. He continues to rest with his eyes closed, and the fairy barely flickers above the surface, as if guarding the silence. Next to him appears a fairy. She sings and dances in her incomprehensible language, and he thinks in surprise that she is so small, like a little bug, but she stubbornly continues her movements, and he suddenly realizes this is Alina. He tries to gather his thoughts. Fairies, according to rumors, are not the kind you easily meet, so is it normal that she appeared to him so quickly? No matter how strange it is, he needs to behave friendly and start talking to her to win her over, so he silently continues to look in her direction. He looks at her from afar and convinces himself that she seems not to notice his presence, and because of this he feels awkward and unsure what to do next. She suddenly laughs heartily and asks, who is he, a sad boy, or is he even a real hero? He angrily asks if this is some kind of mistake, because he does not look like a weakling. He sharply grabs the fairy, squeezes her in his fist with indignation, and as soon as he realizes what he has done, his face twists in shock, and she screams. The fairy screams at him. What is he doing, and doesn't he see that before him is Chipel? Mel Lilat thinks to himself. He only wanted to talk to her friendly, but now he almost crushed her, and she keeps hitting him, demanding to be released. She hits his palm and sprinkles various insults at him, shouting for him to let go immediately. Mel Lilat thinks to himself that nothing can be done now, and the fairy, gasping with rage, barely utters, "Wait." He confidently says that he wants to tell her something, and she immediately asks if he really wants to confess his love. Her voice trembles, and she begins to speak nervously in response. Mal Lila blushes, rubbing his cheek with closed eyes, and says that he caught her off guard. She doesn't even know what to do. Mal Lila believes that his intuition warns him. If he makes the wrong choice, everything could end very badly. Kyla must admit that the fairy possesses divine power. If her assessment is used carelessly, the burden will become too heavy, and he wonders if it really reads so easily from the expression on the face, so she firmly holds the assessment in her hand. She teases him and asks if he can take his eyes off Cutie Chipple even for a moment, and he looks and sees that this is a fairy with a bad profession, so Mal Lila cannot hold back a smile of surprise. Halet feels awkward when reading the inscription because she does not understand what it means. She is a fairy with such a quality, and he thinks there is something more hidden here than just a random word. Well, she is still a fairy. He sharply gets up, and the heat makes his head spin as he tries to gather his thoughts and understand what is happening. Maybe he really can read her status, but she does not calm down at all. She asks him not to look at her so passionately and continues to explain something persistently. He must know she will not give up so easily and will torment him, and Chipel will make him fall in love with her even more, so says Mal Lila. Charlotte thinks there is no need to read it and replies to her that he is not going to confess love, to which she sharply objects. Things will go differently. She smiles sweetly and assures that he is by no means bad, he just does not understand her logic, and then explains. He decided to court Chipel, and she is already beginning to lean towards it. He thinks to himself that he never intended to flirt with her, he will just ignore her again and, unable to hold back, asks her, "Why did you come here?" He stops her on the spot, and she answers that Chipel managed to hook him so quickly, like butter on bread. She explains that she came only to understand what kind of hero he really is, and he immediately retorts, "And what will you do next?" "If you turn out to be a good person," she says, "I will make you fall in love with me and make you my servant." She awkwardly lets out a smile, catches the thought that he understands it all the same, and he throws her a sweetheart with such a serious face, as if it's not a joke at all. She looks at him and says that she doesn't need to tell him what she already knows, because it really spoils the impression and even disappoints her a little. He denies that he was talking about her, and she replies, of course, that's exactly how she understood it, while he politely tells her, "You have a lovely hairstyle." She is outraged that it still affects her, and she rejects. No, definitely not her, he just suddenly remembered his friend, and she begins to sharply gather her thoughts to stop the argument. She bursts into anger, squeezes his hand with her palms, hits him and shouts that she understood everything, immediately guessing the truth, and Chipel hoarsely replies to her. How offended she is by what kind of man he is, since he should be praising Chipel more. She stands up closer, raises her chin and tightens her words, preparing to put an end to this scene. Her hands rise in exclamations like, since it's like that, she will definitely make the hero fall in love with her, and he replies that these are only her own fantasies. It has now become clear to him. This answers the question very easily, since she seems so simple, and he anxiously freezes but then thinks further. Dignit, probably for some reason, associates everything with love, so it seems better not to talk about it, because Chipel has the same mystery, agility, and cruelty as the fairy, and he decides not to lead her to dangerous topics. It's time to get to the point and end the conversation. He asks if she is cooperating with the evil dragon, but she doesn't understand him, and this surprises him. He asks again in surprise if she doesn't know about the evil dragon, and she shouts indignantly that of course she knows, and insists that this question doesn't even cause doubt. Mal Leela begins to stutter and glances over her shoulder, as if telling that the dragon but evil. Salat understands that she does not know this, explains to her the rumors. Supposedly there are fairies who cooperate with the evil dragon and hinder him, and asks if she has heard anything like that. Mal Lilith does not worry about the opinion of other fairies, exhales and thinks that this looks like a fiasco, because, apparently, they were talking about something else from the very beginning. She knows nothing of the sort. A malicious mood rises in her, and she suspects that Salat simply thought something bad about Chipel, but he replies that this is not so. He says that he does not do that, and Mal Lilith irritably scolds him, after which Salat asks where to learn about other fairies who ask for forgiveness, and she answers, let him go to the king and ask why not, because with such rules only he decides everything. The echo of the hero's sword power again brought the fairy king to memory, and now he understands this, says it aloud to her, and holding his breath, asks her, "And how will you be able to meet him then?" She asks again, and crowns her surprise with a dry answer. He has not come out for a long time, so probably there is no chance. The hero only nods and says that apparently another way will be needed. Then probably you will have to go to the fairyland, he voices, and she laughs, saying that he will not get there, but Chapel, of course, will be able to lead him. He looks at her as if seeking confirmation. "This is a bad omen, you will have to take me with you," he says sternly, trying to keep confidence, and she makes a cute face and stubbornly says she will not take him. Her words fade while he barely holds on. She still presses against him because it is dangerous. He almost crushed her, and she steps back so as not to get hurt, asks if he can lead her there. "Yes," she answers, and adds, "If you let me go, I will help," but he hesitates and falls. He silently considers. He will try to read her condition a little, but immediately his head starts to hurt from the thoughts apparently dealing with the divine is not as simple as he imagined. She looks intently at him, and then suddenly produces a flash, and everything around becomes bright and sharply vivid for a moment. She bites him. His hand jerks and tears away from the place, flying away, and he shouts, "Get him." Mal Leela regrets this, but already jumps forward. But he cannot reach her. Chipel nods that these days people go outside more often, and quietly suggests, maybe he should try his luck there. Violet considers this useful information, yet he really wants Chipel to be by his side constantly. Somewhere in his thoughts he stops, realizing, some people act too riskily without a hint from others. People ask fearfully what that was, because they just saw a flash in that direction, and Clara is urged to stand still, and at least hide with a towel because Mel is there. Clara calls her brother, and Lisa behind tries to cover her with a towel, then immediately dives into the hot springs right to him and hugs tightly. Laser at that moment shouts at her to stop, but Lisa is already in the water and trembling from the heat, asks what she is doing, and Mel Lillet immediately waves her off and claims it is a misunderstanding. He did nothing. Mel Lillet asks if he just spoke with someone, and in response hears that he was talking to that fairy over there, near the flash. When Leela raises her gaze and sees the fairy, Clara asks if there is something there, and then Mal Leela understands. Clara does not see her, and Chipel begins. He begins to get angry and wonders if she noticed him, so she should not scare Mal Leela like that. She seems not to like Clara very much, and the fairy sternly says something in reply. When he says goodbye to him, Mal Lillet tightens the thought in her head. If everything continues like this, she will simply leave. Well, he agrees with the circumstances and pretends as if she already left, while he spins the plan in his head down to the smallest steps and finally demonstrates it, triggering a series of sharp flashes. He whispers to himself, good that she left, because if he had to endure that bright series of flashes again, he would not have stayed on his feet from the pain, so he wipes his head. He straightens up and says directly, good that she left, and Chapelle immediately starts to smile maliciously and suspiciously and shouts at him. He tells her that he himself revealed his weaknesses, and she dismissively waves it off. He is stupid. Then Clara again tears this flash from the darkness. Clara pulls her eyelids shut. Mal Lillet takes everything for granted and thinks that last time he caught him by surprise. But if you squint, overall it is still bearable while he yells at her. When Clara jumped onto the source of light and grabbed it, Chipel looked at her with surprise and could not understand what exactly was happening. Her jumps and screams scatter in all directions because she can hardly see anything, but if it is her brother's request, she will do everything, rushing forward and stretching out her hands to catch what is needed again. Clara grabs the fairy with her mouth and freezes in an unexpected scream. Mal Lillet says that it is wonderful and that Clara has incredible instincts. Violet pulls the fairy out of her mouth, smiles and says that she is fine, but admits that she does not understand anything, yet she feels good when praised. These very unconscious and weak lies, smeared with saliva and groans, make Mal Lillet think that the fairy is alive somewhere, so he definitely needs to act further. Lisa again takes out the key to the fairyland, and now the main question, how to make it work exactly as a key, so she asks what was so bright, while Mal Lillet feels the heavy atmosphere thickening around after all this was successfully caught. They, having arrived, grabbed Chipel and set off to the center of the kingdom, the capital, and before going to meet the fairy king, he said he wanted to prepare, and then Sylphie Estphalianis offered to accompany him, even warning, even in your own. At home it can be dangerous, says Sylphie Estphalianis, but there is a shop that sells delicious meat dishes, and also a bunch of cute things, from which Mal Lillet at least for a moment relaxes. Salat, confident in his own righteousness, says that he is protecting the princess, lifts a small cage, and declares that only one bug is a bit annoying. Who exactly does he mean, this insect in the cage? The cage for insects or birds is covered with magic. Fairies can freely teleport through space, but this magic does not allow them to pass, and Chipel insists that he cannot leave Mal Lillet alone with another woman in disguise. Violet lifts the cage, looks at him intently, and asks if he hates her, and in response he only sighs, of course, because he locked her in this cage. She sternly emphasizes, no matter what happens, he will still have to take responsibility and win Chipel's heart. Kayla pushes the cage away from herself, and a warm wave of love flows from it, after which he apologizes to Sylphie Estphalianis for bringing this strange thing with him, and she hugs him tightly. He raises his hands and says it's nothing serious, and it doesn't affect her at all. She even feels good and calm that she can walk beside him, and she is extremely happy, like a fairy in a cave who has just extinguished any fear. In the cage, she yells at her for what she just said, while Sylphie sternly orders her not to dare flirt with him and to behave decently. When she asks Philians to look suspiciously at the cage, Chipel rudely intervenes. Why is she staring so stubbornly like that, and what does she want to achieve by attracting attention? And she finally quiets down but still does not look away. He notices her and immediately apologizes, explaining that if she doesn't look closely, she simply won't be able to see the fairies, and at that moment she responds with a gentle smile. Then he says he also wants to be friends, and asks if she has any objections. Chipel freezes for a moment, thinking about how best to say it so that she doesn't feel embarrassed. She quietly blushes, smiles, and curses herself for her boldness, because if he insists, then fine, she agrees to be his friend. While they look at each other and admire one another, this fairy quietly thinks to herself that she is actually so simple and trusting. Sylphie Estphalianis tells him, hinting that they should first go to the weapons shop, and he replies that he needs a sheath for this sword, because carrying it like this is extremely inconvenient. Sylphie Estfiliones insists again that there is truth and danger in that, and Mal Laliot insists. The townspeople on the road said that making a sheath takes 2 to 3 days, so he refused, thinking that the same would be heard in the capital. The man emphasizes that in the capital's weapon shops they will tell him the same, but he does not want to spend so much time, so Chipel asks him not to delay and still go there. He asks her what exactly it is about, because the hero's sword should be in proper sheaths, shouldn't it? She says that everything has already been revealed, and claims her king brought them along with the hero's body de Drago, and the fairy said it would be so Mal Layla. She explains that the sheaths for the hero's sword are a magical artifact, and if she is not mistaken, they have convenient functions, so that is exactly why they were brought. Philip asks in surprise if this is true, and now wants to learn even more, so they stop by the shop and enter the armory. Inside they greet the master, and the old man asks what they came for today, after which he pulls out his items from the counter to show what might suit them. He takes out a sword, says he is looking for sheaths that will fit this weapon exactly, and asks permission to examine it as if it were something extraordinary. Mal Lilith is anxiously impressed by this confidence. As soon as Mal Lilith saw the sword, he extended it forward, and the old man's eyes flashed with surprise. He said that this is the hero's sword and rejoiced happily. Mal Lilith asks if he knows about this, and the old man replies that of course. Blacksmiths cannot not know about this sword, because 30 years ago he saw it only once in the city where the hero died, and even then he could not approach it. He imagines the moment when the sword is pulled from the stone, and begins to act himself, watches, snoops among the boxes, mutters that this thing is somewhere here, and finally extends the found sheaths. He says that if these sheaths are adapted to the exact dimensions, they will fit perfectly on his sword as soon as it touches the blade. Pilate begins to ask if he understands that he has so much time, and hears in response, "There will be enough hours to do everything necessary," he only marvels. They exclaim in surprise, "Really that fast?" And the old man laughs in response. Mel Layloth immediately says that he cannot leave the sword here, but the old man reassures, "Don't worry," and shows that he will take care of the weapon. Pilate explains that he only needs to take a look to understand its size. Let them just wander a bit, distracting time, and he thinks this will help him a lot. They leave the room together. Not holding hands, Sylphie Estfilianis asks what they will do next, and he replies that he needs to think it over. In some workshop he asks if she needs any equipment, and she shakes her head in denial. It seems nothing is needed. Then he clarifies once more if what she already has is enough. If she needs a robe, he imagines how extraordinarily personal she would look in it, so he points to the clothing, and she immediately blushes. She watches him and says that if Mal Lilith said so, then she will try herself, takes the clothes, and leaving, adds that she will try them on while Mal Lilith stays nearby and watches. Leela looks around the room, where there is so much different equipment, and just then a scream comes from the fitting room. She groans, holding her breath. She says hurtfully that it hurts. He immediately thinks if she is injured, pulls back the curtain and asks if she is okay. She sits motionless, as if afraid to move. Having missed and not managed to put on the clothes, Mal Layloth darted her eyes and froze, and then from shock let out a quiet scream, and Sylphie Estefilian-wise also blushed from shame. He gathers his voice and asks if she is all right. "Thank you for forgiveness," she murmurs barely audibly, and in the caged chapel clenches shame because he hears every word of their messy babbling. She goes outside. Suddenly she makes an unsuccessful step. She caught the hem of her own mantle. It is clear that it is much longer than she thought, and this could be dangerous. Mal Lilith barely reacts. Still red, Sylphie Estfilianis says that if this is Mal Lila, then she does not mind him looking at her, and he holds his gaze on her, as if not knowing what to do next. Without asking anything directly, Chapel states, "After all, he came specifically to her to watch," and Mal Lila shouts back that this is not true, and that it is all just a misunderstanding. Violet asks about armor. She replies that she has never worn anything like that, and Mal Lila explains, she has very little physical strength, so maybe light armor would suit her, and asks if it will be enough for her. The saleswoman initially apologizes if the lightest armor is available in this shop, and says that if he means exactly that she will bring it to him, while at the same time clarifying what he wants. He coughs as soon as he sees what exactly Mel Lilat offers him to try on, and hearing that this set is free, he covers his mouth with his hand to suppress the cough. His eyes twitch with irritation, and he says he does not approve when he is called the older brother, and the saleswoman replies that this is not true at all, because it is still impossible. She understands everything and assumes that someday, when she becomes older, she will be able to wear something like that, Mal Layla. Violet immediately imagines her already grown up, and it seems she wants to be like Queen Alina, so he blushes even more brightly and suddenly exclaims that such a thing is unimaginable. She cannot wear something like that even when she becomes an adult, and cannot show herself like that to anyone except her brother. By the way, according to Mal Leela, it seems this armor provides good protection. She changes clothes, and they go out together, holding onto each other. Directly opposite each other, Sylphie Estfilianis asks what they will do next, and he replies that he has one thing he has always wanted to try, and Mel Leela listens attentively. He uses his unique skill of appraisal to find a cheap item, quickly check its price, and get rich almost instantly, while they look through many things. They go around various shops, examining vases, paintings, weapons, even cats, and he sighs sadly, not hiding his fatigue from the long hustle. He believed that prices were roughly normal everywhere, and in this country all stores were honest and had good appraisers. Something is blinking in front of him, a magic shop, and he looks at his own palm, dreaming of obtaining at least one limited skill. Such skills can be acquired later either by spells or items, so a person chooses what they like, but there is a limit. Even for heroes, the maximum is 5, and for Mal people only 3. Now Layla's threshold is 3 skills, and if there are too many, they not only won't work but can also reduce her strength. Acquired skills remain with him for life, although they can be easily replaced by stronger skills or analogs, so one must choose very carefully. Salat asks if he wants to look around this magic shop, and with interest clarifies that one limited skill intrigues him the most. He asks in surprise what kind of skill it is, and he is explained. It is the limited ability of self-healing. Any excessive load, depending on circumstances, can greatly exhaust the body, but Salat is sure that with self-healing it feels much easier. Sylphie Estfalian says she understands, and Mel Liliat nods in response. Salat says that such a skill is too expensive and rare, of course, and nothing can be done about rarity, so he advises at least to look at what is in the shop. Maybe something will be found for their needs, despite all these sales. The woman smiles welcomingly and says that the darling has visited her again, and he replies, they came not to hurry but to carefully examine the goods, so she, concentrating, gazes at the shimmering items on the counter. Sylphie Estfalianez smiles gently and agrees. That's how it is, and then asks what exactly they are interested in, and he answers that he dreams of acquiring the rare skill of self-healing, because of which she silently evaluates him with her gaze. Dinnet asks in surprise if it really suits him. Sylphie asks his combat level, and he admits that he recently received rank D, after which she sighs tiredly and calls him closer. She commands, child, and asks if he does not know that almost all self-regeneration skills are acquired only thanks to magical elixirs, and each of them, without exception, is an extraordinarily powerful substance that must be used skillfully. Sylphie explains that if a person below rank B drinks such an elixir, it will inevitably end in death. And Estfalinis immediately worries about Mel, and the shopkeeper warns that this should not be done, although she, of course, would be pleased if they bought her goods, yet she strongly advises to make sure that Mel is safe. Layla lowers her head and assures that she does not intend to sell such a risky elixir to customers. Letty asks if he can at least take a glance at the box with the elixir, and Layla allows it, saying they came only to look, and asks them not to touch and to behave very carefully. They are forced to wait near the entrance, and then the workers loudly call the employee named Galetta, stating that they want to see the elixir Iris Spring, and she hands them a small box and opens it. Mel Leela instantly reads the characteristics of the contents. It is a source potion for the Iris, a magical elixir costing 7,500,000 units of money, granting limited power of Earth Goddess healing, but after full consumption carries the risk of instant death and requires sufficient power rank or combined use of items or magic for rapid recovery. This elixir has not been sold, yet only because of its properties, they really have only one self-regeneration potion. He decides that he must show this to Chipple. If the evaluation is applied gradually, the effect will be quite good, and self-regeneration will allow unlimited use thanks to the hero's sword effect, so he will be able to neutralize the drawback of this potion. He immediately realizes that there is only one problem. It is incredibly expensive, and he cannot hold back and says it aloud, but stops mid-word because he has already realized what he will be dealing with. Such a price is justified only by rarity, but he lacks the money to buy it, and just then someone sharply tugs at his sleeves.